I got a pillow if you want. There's not in that chair. I feel like I have a cigar go with this thing, so you can do that. Okay. So to start out, first we should give you the classic story of how this all started. I had it in my mind that I might want to move to Argentina. And so I wanted to go to South America, and I thought if I go to South America, I should take a biplane. So Kevin and I and a couple other buddies went to Oshkosh in 94, 93, something like that. And anyhow, we, after looking at airplanes all day and stuff, I was kind of shopping around for biplanes to take to South America. So that night we went to the AC Doocy, which is the most famous bar in Oshkosh. And from there, somebody told us about this bar called the TNT. So we went over to the TNT, and we were about the only people in there, I think. It was about 5 of us and the bartender, and the bartender's wife.
Still not sure if that bar actually existed.
No, nobody's ever found it again.
Nobody's ever heard of it, we can't find it.
Yeah, so, but anyhow, so we sat in this bar, and we're proceeding to sample all the goods, and we started out sitting on the stools, and we ended up sitting on the bar with our feet on the stools, turning around and saying, haven't had one of those yet. And somewhere along the way, I got talking about this trip to South America in biplane, and I told Kevin, well, you ought to get one and come along too. So that's kind of how it all started, and of course the southern tip of South America is called Tierra del Fuego, so every time we were doing flaming shots, that was it. Every time we did a flaming shot, we'd do it to the chant of Tierra del Fuego.
Hey, well, we haven't had a shot at that one.
So, and then the bartender, we didn't have any place to stay, so the bartender let us stay on there, took us home, let us sleep in the living
Actually, it
room
was
and
the
stuff.
bartender's wife.
Yeah, he wasn't too keen on it.
Bartender
I got a question.
Yeah.
Did you fly up there that time?
No, we drove in the van. We went with a guy, Chuck Linden. He drove, and I think there was 5 of us all together. But anyhow, that's how it kind of started. That we both get biplanes to go to South America. So we started looking in earnest at biplanes, and I got mine first. Picture up there on the wall in the upper right is our 2 biplanes. One's a green one in front was a Fisher Celebrity. And then we spent, and this was in 94, and then we spent several months flying around the country looking at airplanes for Kevin. We went to Texas, California, Wisconsin, or Minnesota, different places. And then we found down in Texas, 2 trips to Texas, because there was a peeping pole we looked at. And Kevin got the white plane in Texas. And then we spent 14 months, over a year, modifying them to do this trip because we need extra fuel, we needed to overhaul the engines, put fresh mags on them, plus get sponsors and parts and everything. One thing I remember, well, you know, George Babcock, one of our sponsors was Avocet watches, and the Avocet watch was neat because besides being a watch, it also had a barometer, an altimeter, airspeed, temperature, and
Management was the altimeter.
yeah, it had the altimeter and temperature, and George said, oh boy, that'll be a great backup. I said, backup? Hell, it's my primary instrument. I don't have this stuff in my airplane.
Before the GPS.
So, we were kind of bare bones, and we got these planes, worked on them for 14 months, and anyhow, we'll just get into this. This is
Working on it for 14 months, I got a story I want
Okay.
to tell. Okay, I had this thing in my garage, that WWII plane. Wings off, fuselage on its side, and I was rewiring the whole thing, right? And it was in there for months. And, you know, if you ever worked on a home-built airplane, you order a lot of stuff through the mail. And one day, I'm in my garage working on this airplane, and I look out, and the mailman's sitting out there in his car by my mailbox, just looking at me. So I walked out there, and I said, what's up? You know, what do you need something? And he said, you're building an airplane. He wondered why I didn't bring all these heavy packages to my house, and he finally figured it out. Here's my garage. Anyway.
So this is the general route mapped out on this cake that we have. We're going to leave Tekamah, and the idea was to make it down to Ushuaia. That was the thing that took place in the night of in Oshkosh is that we were talking about Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. And we had an argument about there's a scene in there where they're gonna become payroll guards, and this old guy throws something out to see how good a shot they are, and he throws something out and says, "Hits this." And I argued that it was a silver dollar, and Kevin said it was a plug of tobacco. And the bet was whoever lost the bet would have to buy the other person a shot of tequila in Ushuaia, Argentina. And I lost the bet, so that was why we had to go to South America.
So I don't have my shot of
I
tequila.
can't think of a better reason.
Hey, we'll start going through these. Trying to think, yeah. Get this thing to where I can kind of twitchy. So we got the airplanes, I got the Celebrity, and the joke was, comes in some assembly required. So this is getting, it was delivered in a U-Haul type truck. We're putting the wings on it, rigging the wings, putting it together. And then this was a picture after 14 months of working on them. And these are sponsors that we had on the side here. And
Hey, another question.
they're basically ready to go at this point, about 100 days before the trip. Go ahead.
How many years was it after you took your trip around the world?
3. I did that in 92, and this was 90.
Sorry to interrupt, but I
That's
just.
okay, yeah. It was 95, 96, so just
Okay.
over 3 years. And pretty much started working on it within 2 years of the around.
Okay.
Because this is 14 months into it, and the planes are basically ready to go. We've done most of the test flights, and we got 100 days to go at this point.
So to give you some perspective, 14 months, yeah, but, you know, it was like a second job. I mean, we were working on these things.
Every spare
We work
minute.
our 8-hour days at the plant, and we go to the airport and work about 4 hours on the planes every day. And then on weekends, a couple of 12-hour days,
Yeah.
you know.
Wow.
And I mean, I dragged my kids out there, and they had toys and a go-kart, and they, you know,
Yeah.
stuff they did out there. And then we spent a weekend at Paul's house because it was close to the
Yeah, that's only
airport.
3 miles
I mean,
north.
this was our life for like a year and a half of working on these airplanes. Always.
Yeah. And so here we are, 100 days, pretty much getting real close, ready to go. We still got a few modifications and some more flying to go. And this is an hour later.
Oh,
Go ahead.
So, yeah, I'm flying test flights in the biplane. I'm on base legs at Tekamah runways airport, and pull the throttle back, and noticed that it was a 3-bladed prop, and I noticed that one of the props I can see sticking up, and that didn't seem right, you know. I thought, well, maybe that's one of those optical illusions, you know, where the prop's really spinning, but it looks stationary, you know. I know. So, you know, you go through that denial for a little bit. I was at about 500 feet when the engine quit. I probably wasted about 200 feet of denial. And then I tried to start the engine. I turned towards the runway and the beam field, and I tried to start the engine 3 times. I cranked the starter 3 times, changed the mixture setting, all that. Wouldn't start. So I remember saying out loud, "All right, we're going to land now." So I headed for the beam field, which was just short of the runway. I couldn't make the runway, didn't have the glide to make the runway, which probably would have been fine. You know, it's a little rough, might have had some landing gear damage, but I thought it was a doable landing. Although I didn't see the barbed wire fence. So the barbed wire fence snagged my left landing gear, flipped the airplane over, and I was actually hanging in the harness right there. Luckily, Paul had told me the story from earlier on when he had
5 years
flipped
previous.
over 5 years previously when he had flipped over a Piper Colt in a bean field, ironically, and
Broke
he told
gear.
me that the only injury he had was on his head because when he unclipped his seatbelt, he hit his head. So I thought of that when I was hanging there, so I was about to grab on something before I unclipped my belt, and that's why I didn't hit my head. So no injuries, but it was a sad day for the biplane.
Yeah. And that's Scott Olson came and
oh, yeah, it
just
is.
went out. He just ran home,
darn.
loaded up this on his flatbed and hauled it down there with the tractor. And
No FAA, right?
picked it, and yeah.
Yeah, no.
Although the FAA did a safety talk, got a hold of this picture and used it in their safety talk for years, probably 10 years,
Really?
saying it was neat.
Oh, they're saying it was you?
Yeah,
Why would they say that?
because
They were confused.
They
were
knew him.
confused.
But no, they did come out and look at the airplane, the FAA,
Yeah.
and if you get on the NTSB website, put in November 494 Kilo
Well,
November,
you can
my
see
name
the
will
accent.
come up.
Really?
Yeah.
So, yeah, there is a report.
Yeah, so.
That's the one that was in the back of your hangar, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, at the last hangar I had at the end,
Mhm.
yeah. So now we're 100 days from departure. We can't change the date because we're kind of weather dependent, because we need to go down in, when it's summertime in South America. So we need to go there December, January, February. And also we needed to do that because it's the only way we could get enough vacation at work to keep the vacation from 1 year at the end and the vacation of the next year at the beginning of the year and stuff. So it was the only way we could get about 40, 50 days
Straight
whatever,
together,
straight
2 years
together.
worth of vacation
Yeah.
and all the holiday season.
So then we had to get another plane, so we at this point, in 95, the internet is kind of, still in infancy and stuff. Kevin got on the internet, found this plane down in Phoenix. It was a tri-pacer for $12,000. So I sold, I had a DeLorean, I sold that, and we took the money and we flew down commercial, bought this plane sight unseen, which needed a lot, and flew it back over the Rockies to here, and now we had to do in 100 days to this plane what we just spent 14 months doing to the other plane.
So, since we got time this time, let's talk a little bit about the trip down there.
Oh, yeah.
Qualify as this tri-pacer down there, right? And we didn't have anything to sump the tanks with. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Down there.
And he said,
But the
"You
guy
don't have
said,
to
"Oh,
worry."
this is Arizona. It's
There's
dry.
no water.
We don't
Dry.
sump our tanks down here,
Yeah.
So we're a little skeptical about that. So we came up with a baby food jar,
Yeah.
and we're able to sump the tanks with it. And I think we
It was
sumped
about half water
Yeah, we sumped it about 3 or 4 times
before we got all the water
Couldn't
out.
get water
Because
out.
of the condensation and stuff. You
Yeah.
still get the
But
condensation.
it made it over the Rockies
Yeah.
a couple of times and over the Andes a couple of times. So.
Yeah, but it had a real anemic prop, had a really worn out prop on it. And this is, just to give you an idea how basic the panel was that we flew. I mean, we got a nav com, a valve flip-flop com, and we have an encoding transponder. We have a tachometer, we have a ball, we have a whiskey compass that's half dry, your oil temperature and pressure, and then we had artificial horizon that we put in that we fed off the Venturi. There was no vacuum pump. So it was pretty bare bones instruments. But we wanted to keep the weight down too. That was a big concern. So this just kind of give you an idea of some of the stuff. Let's try and go through this part a little quicker.
These are the
New struts. There was on the tri-pacer, there was an AD about the struts corroding from the inside, so they had new and improved struts. And one of the sponsors we got was Univair out of Colorado, and they agreed to sell us parts at cost, so I was able to get new struts for the plane, just a whole lot of stuff at greatly reduced price. And later on, of course, when we got into really severe turbulence, that was the big thing in the back of my mind was I was really glad we had changed the struts and that they wouldn't be breaking on us and stuff. And that we also painted the leading edges on the wings because some of the paint was off. We knew we were going to be flying through a lot of sand and dust. There's kind of if any of you guys were out yesterday in the wind before it rained, that's what South America's like every day.
No.
That kind of haze and sand blowing around.
You got
All the way up to
volcanoes.
10,000 feet.
You got the volcanoes
It's
spitting
almost-
out ash,
Yeah.
and then you got the Atacama Desert.
Which has never had moisture in known history. It's
So
never
all
had
this
a drop
sand
of
was
rain.
stirred up and so,
Yeah, so-
all this new paint was pretty much stripped off by the time we
Yeah, but we painted it knowing that it was gonna get blasted off and stuff. Of course, we got the new struts on, and we had to rig the wings, re-rig, get everything set right, and.
And it was done very scientifically. If you
Yeah,
look at
at the end of
the
this,
end of that string, there's a beer can as a weight.
and of course, the whole thing was gutted and put a new fuel valve in because that was a known problem. And that's just some of the boxes of parts. Kevin talked about his guy saying, his mailman saying, oh, you're building an airplane. Well, I had stuff coming from UPS at my house in Tekamah almost every day for probably 8 months. You know, first it was parts for the biplane, and then it was parts for the trifacer. And see, we gotten sponsors for the biplane, and you know, like Slick Magnetos and fire companies and battery companies. And then after Kevin wrecked his, and we got another plane, we had to come back to him and say, listen, could you give us a couple more Magnetos and stuff? And they were very accommodating, and it helped that had done the around the world air race, and they kind of got on board a little quicker with having a little bit of credibility about doing things. But one of the things we needed was a propeller, and we got Sensenich on board with a new propeller, and boy, that made a world of difference. We bought it kind of at cost. It's a long story, but yeah, they were a real good company. But anyhow, this is just give you an idea of just some of the parts. Had to pull the engine, took it down to Georgia Central Cylinder, and get it gone through to make sure everything's good and all the accessories good and stuff like that. And mind you, all this time we're doing this, you know, we've never flown this plane except from Phoenix to here. And now we've gutted it, we pulled the engine, we put it back together, we put a new prop on, we put extra nitrogen in the nose strut so that we'd have a little bit more ground clearance with the propeller, that we'd have an extra 6 inches or so because we knew we'd be possibly in some rough terrain. We really didn't know what to expect.
All with about 100 days to do all that, and most of it winter, you know.
Oh yeah.
You guys know how cold.
You guys doing the
It was
hangar?
just brutal cold.
Was it in the hangar you did
It
it?
was in a hangar.
Yeah, your hangar, the hangar that you're in now, on the corner there. Yeah.
So we had a tent.
Tent
you know,
made of
I don't know if we
plastic.
have a picture, but we had a tent built around the airplane, trying, you know, and
Torpedo heaters
into it.
and kerosene heaters, and you have everything going full blast, and you could, so that you could work without gloves. And then you turn the heaters off, and I mean, in like 10 seconds, it'd just be stone cold again.
Yeah.
It was, this was trying to figure out where to place all the sponsors and stuff. And this was the route. This is kind of interesting. These are all O&C maps. And this is the tip of South America, and this is all the way up to Nebraska. And here's an office chair. We had to do this at OPPD because it was the only place that had a big enough floor. And to give you an idea, and the O&Cs were interesting because it was the only thing available, but the O&Cs, you know, they haven't been updated since like 75, 82, it depends on which one.
In fact, some of the areas are just blank.
Yeah, they're just white, and they'll have a note in there that says, no, and this is along the Andes, and it'll say, no mountain peak believed to exceed 14,000 feet. Believed, you know, and it's like, well, if you find out difference, give us a call. And it'd just be a big white area, you know.
If you live through it, call
Yeah, it
us.
wouldn't show the mountain range or anything, it'd just be a white area, and it's like, okay,
And keeping in mind that we're flying an airplane that service ceiling is 12,500 feet.
yeah.
If you're lucky.
10 actually, 10.
10.5.
10 even. Is the surf. What that means is you can no longer climb at greater than 100 feet per minute. Something like that, yeah. We had the plane to 13.5, but it takes a long time as we found out.
So the interesting story here is the first thing we did is we said, well, we got to have some place to start from, right? So we just drew a rough line. You know, maybe
Yeah.
this is about how you go. Then we'll figure we'll start at the top and we'll tweak it as we go down. We'll do
We
a
spent
research.
14 months tweaking it.
Spent months tweaking that line. In the end, the way we
Pretty
went,
much flew dead on that rough
pretty much
line.
the rough line.
I'll be there.
Yeah. And this is Chili Will, which is right here. And this is fun because he has this little thing that opens up in the back, and then we split the seam in it, and we put in this little piece of black cloth in there, and then we filled him with money. Then we put this black cloth back in there so you wouldn't see the stuffing or the money,
Oh,
and put him back over.
that's interesting.
And that's how you carry $5 cash. And nobody, they were going through our bags all the time looking for things to steal or contraband and stuff like that, and money and drugs. And everybody handled Chili Will, and just kind of threw him to the side, all the stupid stuff.
They looked at it.
Yeah, they didn't
In
pay.
those days, they didn't have ATMs anymore, so we had to carry cash.
Yeah, and you had to carry small bills. You couldn't just carry, you had to carry 5s and 1s and 10s and 20s, because if something was $20 and all you had was a 50,
You wouldn't get to.
Albuquerque,
We
because
took a left at Albuquerque.
yeah,
The
there was
towers?
some guys there that at the time they hadn't flown a balloon around the world yet, and there was a crew in Albuquerque that had a balloon that they were preparing for an around the world flight. We got some stickers and got to talk to them. Of course, they did. Fawcett ended up doing it in the end, you know, years later. But yeah, there was several crews out there working, and this happened to be one of them. You know.
Well, just coming back had to be a challenge.
Oh yeah.
Because, you know, you guys went over, did you go over Taos? And then
Yeah.
come,
Roughly, yeah.
Yeah.
because it's like, remember that pass we went over?
Yeah.
We still
Angel
had to
fire.
we still had to go to 13,000 feet.
Yeah, that was,
To get
it was,
over.
and with that anemic prop, like I said, that prop was about wore out, and the engine wasn't that good. Yeah, it was an effort getting the plane just home.
We pretty much just were in a slow climb for about 2 states.
That's about it.
I understand.
That's about it. So, anyhow, you all set?
You're good.
Okay. And this is Bob. He was our mascot. So a little, I should have brought Bob too. He's a little plastic penguin with a bobbing head. So he just kind of sit there and nod at you and stuff. Again, this is the actual dash now with all the stuff in. But like you see there, you got an airspeed indicator. You've got a tachometer, ball, what is that? Altimeter. And somewhere we got our artificial horizons over here.
And then we got a handheld GPS up here.
Yeah.
And this is when the GPS didn't have any ground features, it just had the airports, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it gave you a lat line.
Yeah, you had to put it
And
on
so
stuff in.
you just followed on latitude, longitude, you know, and you just kept going along. It was always, that was one thing I should say, is every day, whoever was in the left seat was in charge. The guy in the right seat was the navigator and took care of everything else. And you could debate things back and forth. We always talked about, we played good cop, bad cop, every day. You know, because we'd be in a situation where one guy would say, well, it's getting pretty bad, maybe we should land, and the other guy would say, I don't know, it's starting to get a little clearer up there, you know. And you'd press on, or you'd turn around, but it was always the guy in the left that made the decision. Both people had input, but only one person made the decision. And that's the way it had to be. And that worked out great. We alternated every day we flew. One day Kevin's in the left, the next day I'd be in the left. And so.
And it worked pretty well.
It worked
Way
really
back, there was a time period when I remember writing my log that we were facing death every day.
Every day for
Every day
8
we were
days.
having this, should we do this or should we do that? And wondering if we were gonna make it or not.
Yeah, it was
It wears you down to do that once or twice, but every day for a week.
that was a long week. And this
I
was
like that
taken
picture.
off. Now, keep in mind, we worked on this plane for 100 days, never flown it except from Albuquerque. And so we hadn't tested anything that we'd done. So our test flight was, we took off Christmas Eve, we tried to leave, and we started picking up ice as soon as we were in the pad and it came up. So we landed and came back, and we discovered the oil cooler, which is right in front, behind the propeller, had a leak, and there was a fitting, and it was a right angle fitting. So you couldn't change, in order to tighten it, you couldn't tighten it a little, you had to give it a full turn, and you didn't know if you'd split it, and then you'd have a busted oil cooler, and you'd be screwed and down for repairs and stuff. So we took it off, and we put some Teflon tape on there, which you're not supposed to do, but that, we figured would give it a little bit more lubrication. It gave us that extra turn, and that was it. We took off, and that was our test flight was we took it to South America.
Oh my gosh.
So, and this is
We
taken
also
off
had ice that Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve,
And
so we took
decided
off
not to
Christmas
fly.
Day, yeah.
So we ended up taking off on the
Yeah,
26th.
and it ended up being a nice day. And George, who couldn't be here, he had my old Yankee, our old Yankee. Kevin and George and I were all in this Yankee together. And my girlfriend at the time, Nancy, they were in the Yankee beside us, and that's how we got the air-to-air. And this is like over Nebraska or Kansas or something like that. Yeah, probably Kansas. And they flew with us down to Ponca City. We had dinner. They came back, and we continued on to Oklahoma. And then from Oklahoma, we went down to Chickasha, Oklahoma. We went down to Texas, and we'll show up enough on that now. And crossed the border into Mexico. and
Eagle Pass, Texas.
Eagle Pass.
Into Piedras Negras, Mexico.
Yeah.
So how
Well,
did you-
insurance, which you have to have, or what we thought was insurance. We paid a guy money, and he gave us a sheet of paper in Mexican.
Said, trust me, you're insured.
You're insured and stuff, so off we
Where,
went.
Laredo or what town, remember?
Eagle Pass.
Eagle Pass.
So, going from United States into Mexico, don't you have to stop ahead of time?
Yeah, we stopped in Eagle Pass, which is
Eagle
right
Pass,
on the
United
border.
States?
Yeah,
Right
from
on the
international
border.
airport to international airport. So Eagle Pass
Okay.
is international airport, and then we flew to, what was it?
Piedras Negras.
Piedras Negras, which
Just
is
right across
international.
the Rio Grande.
Yeah.
So you're.
And that's where you clear all your customs. You have to clear customs as soon as you enter any country, and you have to do fumigation. It just depends on who's working and
How much you wanna pay them?
how much you want. Yeah, if they're looking for bribes, they're looking for
Follow
drugs
that.
or whatever. you
And
know.
then from there, it was early enough in the day that we were able to fly to, I think, Ciudad Victoria that
Right.
night in one day. So
Yeah.
we didn't have to spend the night at
Yeah, and then we continued down into Monterrey, Mexico, kind of getting into the north middle of Mexico. And the thing that was fun there in Monterrey was they had a tower, and the tower had a bucket on a rope that said tips. And if you wanted to get out of the airport in a timely manner, then you put money in this bucket and they haul it up, and you put your end number on there and stuff.
Oh my
You know,
gosh.
and we had talked a lot about bribes, you know, a lot of people paid bribes, and we kind of committed to not paying bribes. I know it's a fine line between tips and bribes, but, you know, you pay a bribe, you just set up the next guy to come through, you know, it's gonna be even
Right.
worse for him. So there were several times that we had to hold our ground
Yeah.
and refuse to pay.
Yeah, we had some giveaway, we had some hats and things from our sponsors that we could give people. And plus, we made some stickers that had a map of North and South America with the route and the 2 biplanes on it, because that's what we were originally taking. It said the Great South American Air Adventure. You came up with the name, I think. So I forget how that all happened. It was probably another tequila night.
I still have the card.
And we had business cards that said the Great South American Air Adventure with our name and phone number, maybe our email address or something like that. So we had a couple things to give them. And this white thing here is a silk scarf. It's 6 foot long. That's in that glass behind that chair. And we had that with us. And we also had a gross of kazoos. So the process was, whenever we met somebody, like these guards with guns, and you want them to get on your side, you give them some stickers, you tell them what you're doing, that you're going all the way to South America, and we appreciate you being a part of it. You give them a business card. You ask them if they'll sign your scarf. You know, when we first started out, of course, we got this white scarf, you know, nobody signs it. But as you go along, and you start getting some signatures, and then people bring out their stamps, you know, of whatever official they are. Then you get into this one-upmanship where this guy could be running back to his desk, I got better stamps than he does, you know. And then they'd be signing their name, they'd be real careful like they're signing the Declaration of Independence. You know, they really got an art to it. And if all that failed, then we got kazoos out. And we'd get them playing La Cucaracha on the kazoos. And somewhere we have slides later of guys with guns playing kazoos.
So the idea is
So-
instead of bribing them.
Yeah, try and be friendly.
We made friends
Yeah,
And,
and let them be
and
a
the thing
part.
we found out was that the big thing was if you could get them to smile,
That's
or
it.
especially if you could get them to laugh.
Yeah,
you know,
then you're
you're
on your
good.
side.
And you go.
Yeah, they're probably not gonna
But
shoot
they
you.
had that stern face, and there was one guy in Peru we'll probably
Yeah,
talk about.
we'll get to
later.
him.
Yeah.
What about the language barrier?
You
It was
mind.
there. It was there.
It was there, yeah.
Yeah, I
But,
like France when
yeah, we did pretty good with the language barrier. But anyhow, we went on to Monterey. We're continuing down the west coast of Mexico, and that's when we got into the first weather. I think you were flying that day. And we went past Tuxpan Airport and continued south, and the clouds are getting lower, we're getting lower. You know, we're scud running, we're getting down, we're just under the clouds, we're down to about 500 feet, and finally decided this isn't good, let's go back to this airport that we just passed. So we came into this Tuxpan Airport, which we didn't know was closed. And after we landed, then that was the first time that we met guys with guns. And it would become a pretty common thing later, but the first time, you know, it's a little intimidating to have guys that come
So
up.
we're on flying to this little airport.
Oh, yeah, the people.
And we're, you know, we're looking and it's, what's that on the runway? I don't know, but we gotta land, you know, there's a runner coming in. There's something on the runway. Probably a deer or something, but we gotta land, you know. was people walking across the runway, you know?
Oh my God.
Seemed odd. Well, we found out later, the runway was closed.
Yeah,
You know.
the whole airport was closed. Yeah, they just kinda used it like any other street.
In those days, they had almost all the airports, all but 50 airports in Mexico were closed. The United States, you know,
For the drug
passed
curtailment.
that
Oh, yeah.
And we saw other
prevent
airports that,
drugs from coming into the United States.
actually, when we were, on that, we were just discussing that south of there was another airport that would have been an option, but they had 55-gallon drums on the runway at every, 100 yards or so that you couldn't land without, you know, there's no way you
Kinda like
could get into it,
Chicago.
so. And that was all to keep the drug runners from using the airport at night and stuff like that. They came in, they crashed their planes. So,
And we do have a picture of those guys playing kazoo.
yeah, right here.
There it is.
Oh,
There it is.
look at it.
Yeah, see, we got the scarf out, we're okay, and then,
That is so cool.
We each got one, they all got,
Yeah.
they're all figured out, because they're all just, you know.
What country, is this still
This is
Mexico?
Mexico, yeah. Mexico was great. And, of course, we had Univair and Aeroshell, but there was Moose Air, that was Larry Lee. There's another thing back here you can't see, well, we'll get to that now. Oh, also, we named the plane Hobson's Choice because, if you look up the definition of Hobson's Choice, Hobson was this guy that ran a livery, I think it was in New York City, and he said you got your choice of any horse in the barn as long as it's the one closest to the door. So Hobson's Choice is kind of like the Godfather, you know, a choice when you really have no choice. So, since it was the only plane we could get, it was Hobson's Choice. And then we went down into Guatemala, and this guy was he was a tower operator. Again, that's three things are kazoo.
We're at San Juan.
Guatemala, yeah. This is the light signal gun.
Did you give him that
Military
shirt?
airport.
That shirt, did you give him that shirt? The USA?
No,
He had that shirt.
he had that shirt. We gave him another one. We had a bunch of T-shirts to give away. We didn't have.
You were,
It's a great idea.
And that was the first place we woke up in the morning to the sound of small automatic weapon and cannon mortar fire stuff. There was a lot of fighting going on in the area and stuff.
a lot of these little airports were like half military, half
Yeah.
civilian, you know, they're a combination,
Yeah.
so.
They actually had a Basler DC-3 there, the one with the turbine engines and stuff, sitting on the runway and stuff. Kind of neat. So. And volcanoes. This is where we start seeing volcanoes the whole rest of the trip. And volcanoes were so prevalent, they became landmarks, and people used them. There was one guy we were talking about flying into Guatemala City,
I think it was,
and he,
into,
to give us directions, he said, you just go 4 volcanoes and take a left.
4 volcanoes and take a left. Wow.
And that's how they navigate. You
So
know?
you can see here, this light color, that's all
That's
ash.
all ash.
That's ash
This
that's
is
coming
great.
out of the volcano.
Yeah.
And so all this haze is the ash that's floating around in here.
And then down into El Salvador. And this is a skyscraper. They call it the Tower of Shame. The white things are shot out windows. They just finished, they had a big war in '92, Civil War that gone on, and it was over, but all the soldiers still had their guns, but they were unemployed. And so you got a bunch of bored soldiers sitting around with a big glass building and rifles and nothing to do, so they ended up shooting a lot of the windows out and stuff. But it was, we got a nice couple there. Okay, I put the next one. We had trouble, some communication trouble and trouble with brides, and this couple, he looks like Paul Simon, honestly. They flew a Bonanza in from,
They helped us
Belize,
negotiate out a big fine.
yeah, they wanted to fine us $200 saying our paperwork wasn't in order and stuff, and they spoke fluent Spanish, so they were able to help negotiate things and get us into a good hotel, get a taxi.
They gave us a ride to a nice hotel,
Yeah.
just nice folks.
Yeah,
Just like here, you know, pilots, you
Yeah.
know, good people.
yeah. So it was just, we met a lot of people that helped us out along the way and stuff, so. And then, on to Nicaragua, where we get into Russian control of Nicaragua. So it's all, these are Russian gunships, and Nicaragua El Salvador wasn't real friendly, and Nicaragua, all of Guatemala, kind of northern Central America, were all the civil wars and stuff. A lot of guns and a lot of bribes and restrictions and stuff that people weren't real happy
So there was an aero club here at Managua.
Yeah,
Right,
that's
it
where
was
we
this
met the
place.
guys, yeah.
And there were some guys, back in 1956, some guys called the Blue Brothers that done almost the same trip that we're doing in a Piper Tri-Pacer.
Yeah.
We didn't even know this until a couple weeks before.
A newer one than ours, they did it in a 54 Tri-Pacer, ours was a 52.
And anyway, we met some guys at there was a little flying club at this airport, and they had met those guys, or one of them had met those guys. So it was fun talking to them.
Yeah, he got stuck up in Mexico or something, and they'd flown in, and, yeah. I said, yeah, you know, back in 50-something, I remember meeting these other two guys that were
Doing the
same thing in a Tri-Pacer. We said, really? That had to be the Blue Brothers. And actually, the Blue Brothers, was kind of interesting, that they went on to, they live in Colorado, and I forget the name of the company that they formed. They became highly successful. They were Yale graduates. General Dynamics, yeah. And they're the guys that came up with the drone planes that the military is using now. That's their baby. So that, we said that apparently if you fly to South America in a Tri-Pacer, great things will come later.
Now, wasn't this the place where they were gonna fine us $300 and the dog growling
Yeah, actually it was.
So
Yeah.
the
We
commandant
haven't
of
eaten.
this airport, you know, he was one of those guys that wouldn't smile.
By the
You
book.
know, and so he drug us into his office. It was this little cement building, and he's got us sitting in two chairs, and he's across the desk, and he wants $300. We can afford to give him $300. And like I said, usually our tactic was to try to get him to smile or laugh. You know, he wasn't laughing. And,
Tried the stickers.
And I'm sitting on the right, Paul's sitting to the left of me, and there's a door over there. And I keep hearing this growling noise, and I'm thinking there's a mean dog out there. What is that, a dog or what? Turns out it was Paul's stomach. We
hadn't eaten over a day, and I was just
and,
starving.
I finally got the guy
It was
to crack
really
a
loud.
smile.
You never know what's going to come to your head. Growling stomach. This is Limon, Costa Rica. This is the airstrip right here. This is the ocean, or the Caribbean. Gulf of Mosquitoes, actually, is the name of it. Really beautiful area. But they had, again, guards with guns, and there was one guy here, that's the guy that was chewing on the cocoa leaf and had kind of a glazed look in his eye and kind of twitchy trigger fingers. He didn't make,
We took 3 trips into town in a taxi to get gas.
Yeah.
We had 2 5-gallon gas cans. And
3.
There was no gas at the airport, so we had to take 3 trips into town in a taxi, fill them up with gasoline, and board an airplane and go back.
yeah, that ended up becoming kind of a regular thing. Yeah, we just took 3 empty cans with us just in case we had to do something like that, because aviation fuel just kind of went away as we kept going further south. And go
So
ahead,
could
this is
the
our,
planes fly on not aviation fuel?
yeah, aviation fuel, but
The good thing
couldn't
about
get
this,
it, so whatever you can get.
this old engine, you know, it has like a 6-to-1 compression ratio, so it doesn't need high octane fuel to run on just about anything. Some of this gas, you wouldn't have thought it was
No.
gas just to look at it.
Kind of oily.
But it ran fine. You know, it followed the plugs a few times. We had to clean the plugs a few times, you know, along with the air filter, right?
Yeah,
But yeah, so this day we took off from Limon, Costa Rica, with the idea of flying over land to the other side to Panama City. And the clouds were down to the mountains. So we ended up following the coast all the way. And when I say following the coast, I mean, I'm flying in the left seat. I got the blue blocker glasses on so I can see about 10 feet beyond the prop. Paul's looking straight down at the
Yeah.
coast. You
That
can
was
see
a trick.
straight down, right?
That
And he
was a
said, left, 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 left. Right. That's how we
Oh my God.
that's how it went the whole way. As the trees got closer, it'd be left, and as the trees start disappearing, because you didn't have much of a field of view, it'd be back to the right. And so you just really followed the coast. But yeah, that was a trick I learned with Harlan flying the 310 around the world, is when you can't see very far in front of you, often you can see straight down. And so that it really took 2 people.
So we follow the beach all the way to
Cologne.
Cologne, which is at the north end of the Panama Canal. Panama City is at the south end of the Panama Canal, which is where we wanted to be. That's the international airport. But we got to Cologne and we got on the radio, and I told them I'm going to have to land. You know, we're VFR and it's IFR conditions, and I'm going to land. We're 10 or 20 miles out.
Yeah.
And the guy said, no, you can't land.
It's not
And
an
I said,
international airport.
well, I'm gonna land, you know, I mean, shoot me.
I got no
arrest me, but,
choice.
You know, I gotta land, you know, and he keeps saying no. You know, we got down on the deck over the canal, and you can see the clouds.
Yeah.
And we followed it all the way
We
to
got
Panama
the whole
City,
Panama
and
Canal.
we landed there.
Really?
And they let you do that.
Yeah, we made it, and there were, we don't have a picture, but there were helicopter
Helicopters,
gunships
buzzards.
buzzing all around us, and this was during the time when we were demobilizing down there, the United States was, you know, so there was a lot of activity on the ground, they were taking out barracks and stuff, you know.
How often did you guys get lost?
Not very. I don't remember.
I mean, you didn't have
Define
GPS.
Yeah.
Just go south.
Yeah. When in doubt, go south. Yeah.
Well, I tell you that a lot of the time, especially after this, you know, we follow the coast. So
Right.
you always know where you're at pretty much, you know, and one of the reasons we did that is the weather was usually different over land than it was over water. So most of the time it was clearer over the water than over land, but sometimes it was otherwise. So it kind of gave you a choice,
Yeah.
you know.
And if
And
weather
there's
got,
always towns along the coast, there's always some place to land,
yeah.
and there's, you know, it's a prominent landmark, you always know where you're at.
So you were mostly on the west side of the,
Right.
Right. After this.
After
we were on
this,
the
we
west
brought,
side the
first
entire
we were
time.
on the east side
Right.
of Mexico and
Yeah.
that, and then we went through the canal, and then we were on the west side. Pretty much after Columbia, we still were over the land. But the other advantage of flying over the water is you can get right down, you know, with bad visibility, you can be right down to 100 feet, and you're not afraid you're gonna hit anything other
You know,
than maybe a
right.
ship or
You know
another
that-
idiot in an airplane.
You know that the ocean is,
Which,
you know that the ocean is roughly at sea level, right?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
you know where you're at.
Roughly at sea level.
well, it varies depending on what your altimeter's set at. And then when we left Panama, we had to go to Buenaventura, again, international to international, and we were concerned about flying into Colombia first time, and we wanted everything to be in order. So we ended up actually spending 2 extra days in Panama getting things in order. And one of the things is that we wanted to carry fuel on board and land at a little town called Jaque, which was about 150 or 100 miles south of Panama City, pretty close to the Colombian border. Land there at an abandoned military base from World War II, throw in the 15 gallons of fuel, and that would give us enough to continue on, but we wouldn't be leaving an international airport. We'd be going international to Jaque to an international. We had to get written permission to do that. We had to get our gas cans approved and all this stuff. So this is the runway in Jaque. This is the good end of the runway.
Yeah, we were mowing weeds as we went.
Yeah, it was actually about this high, and yeah, we mowed it with the prop on landing so that it would be short enough for the takeoff.
But this is still in Panama, so yeah, like
Yeah.
I said, we had to go from Panama to Bogota. Couldn't make Bogota, didn't have the range.
Yeah,
So here's Paul pouring one of the
there we are.
gas cans.
And the whole
in.
village turned out.
This is the entire village, and it kind of came out of the trees. There was a little building there.
Yeah, kid wanted to charge us $1 for showing us where the bathroom was.
And then they wanted to sell us, you know, fruit and stuff and the
Yeah,
jungle.
so that was kind of one of my favorite pictures of the trip. This
Wow,
is
look at
flying
that.
over Colombia. The, you know, all this stuff about save the trees and the trees are disappearing. That's flown over a lot of the world, and I'll tell you, it's mostly all trees. You can run chainsaws till the cows come home, and I don't think you'd make a dent in the stuff, so. But yeah, the canopies were so thick that we thought if we went down, we'd probably just land in the treetops. We didn't think we'd ever get to the ground, you know, that it was that thick, and this was a little winding river that's going down to Buenaventura where we're
So
headed.
from Jaque, our flight plan said we were going to Bogota. That was our plan, and we couldn't get there because Bogota is up high and the clouds were low, and we couldn't get to Bogota. So our alternate was Buenaventura, and so we diverted to Buenaventura because we couldn't get up to Bogota. So when we're about 20 miles out, which is about all the radio range we had, you know, we call them on the radio at the Buenaventura Tower, and the guy in the tower spoke pretty good English, the air traffic controller, but he was notably excited. You could tell from his voice that he was excited about something. So we told him we're coming, and we came in and landed, and it turns out that just about the same time we were calling him, there was a helicopter that was owned by some oil company that also was trying to get to Bogota and couldn't, so they diverted to Buenaventura. And
They didn't have the radio
They didn't have the
frequency.
radio frequency for the tower. So they just flew over there and they were hovering in front of the tower trying to get hand signals to get permission to
Oh
land.
my
At
God.
the time, we called on the radio.
calling in. And so this kid, his name was Alexandro, told us later that normally he gets one airplane a week.
Maybe.
Wow.
And here, there's two unexpected, aircraft coming at the same time. He thought it was an invasion. He called out the militia. He called out the local militia. And they came out with guns and mismatched uniforms and whatnot and searched us all. They went and searched the helicopter first. And these guys, like I said, they were on, expense account. They'd been given $100 bills to take care of this kind of stuff. And they did that. And then the militia came over to us next. And we didn't have $100.
We knew they were asking for $100 bills, but we just kept
we
saying,
had-
El Tiendo, and they
We
had them a
had
patch.
like
El
the
Tiendo.
Tekamah hats and
Yeah.
Nebraska T-shirts. And at first they were happy with that, but they finally understood.
Figured out that was all they'd get. And then we gave them $1 to watch our plane. Here's $1, watch our plane.
And they thought that was
And we got away with it because we just kept,
The one guy wanted my little pencil flashlight,
oh yeah.
which was our plan for night flying. We didn't have illuminated instruments, so I told him, no, I can't give you my flashlight.
Yeah.
He was a big guy, too.
And they didn't have fuel. But the helicopter guys helped set up fuel. They brought it in 55-gallon drum barrels, and then we had to hand pump it into the airplane. But at least we got actual aviation gas for a change, which is about the last time for quite a while. And then, where's this at?
This is still in Columbia.
Columbia
Gas
poured it
and
in, yeah.
that-
We poured it in buckets, and then we poured it through a filter to strain out any water. So we got a chamois in a filter. We had a filter with a screen in it. Well, I think we put a chamois in it too or
And
something.
some of these guys, I think this is Alexandro, and that guy, there's a river over there, and they were over there swimming when they heard us coming
Yeah.
in. This
That's why
guy
they had
has
the
two
mismatch.
daughters, so they came over to see what he said.
And here's the other sponsor I was talking about. This is just the end. You can see it says Adventure Network, and they were a company down in Punta Arenas, which is the southern tip of Argentina, and they're the company that fly people from South America to Antarctica, which we really want to go to Antarctica. So we were trying to set it up with them. If we use them, if we put their name on the plane, would they give us, a discount to get to South or to Antarctica? And they said, no, we won't do that. And I said, screw it, let's put the name on the plane anyhow. When we get there, we'll try and shame them into it. Listen, we came all the way. Look, here's your name and stuff.
Didn't work, but it was worth a try.
Well,
This is
we never
C-54.
got to there. But I did that because there was a guy that had a Model A in Chile, southern Chile, and he and his son drove it all the way from Chile up to Detroit. And they went through like Buffalo, came up into New York, and then from Buffalo went over to Detroit. And just before they went to Detroit, they said that they were going to go over to the museum and donate the car to Ford and try and get them to buy plane tickets back to Argentina so they could go home. And Ford had said, no, we won't do that stuff. But once they showed up and they saw the car and how beat up it was and what, all the months of travel with a father and son, yeah, they gave them first class tickets and they gave money for the car and everything. And so that was what was in my, we'll do this and we'll shame them.
So this is a DC-4. that
Three.
is
Turns out to be a 3.
No,
Next
it's
to
not
the
a three.
runway.
That's 4 engines. That's a
Oh yeah, it is a 4.
That's a C-54.
C-54?
Okay. C-54.
Smart ass.
Okay. It's what?
I was in the Air Force,
We crossed it out 3 times.
We talked about
It's
that.
what, a C-54?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So anyway, it's next to the runway in Esmeraldas, Ecuador.
Abandoned.
Abandoned there and
It
appears
has
to
a
be
family in it.
a family living in it. There's a
Oh, my
laundry
God.
hanging and whatnot. So
No kidding.
That'd be
Yeah.
cool.
it's actually a nice runway in a pretty little town, but in order to get from here to the town, there's a bay that
Big
goes
horseshoe.
in
You got
5-6 miles.
You got the airport here, and you got Esmeralda here, but the road goes like this, and it's about
So you got to go all the way around the bay and those mountains to get to the town of
Oh my
Esmeralda.
God.
which is a huge
About
tax.
an hour drive, and the taxi was ancient
Pickup
Toyota pickup truck, and we're riding in the back.
I was in the back, Kevin got shotgun, and I rode in the back.
What country was that in?
This is one of the better houses in
That was in
town.
Esmeraldas, Ecuador.
Ecuador.
Yeah. Tin roof, on stilts. It has a floor, so it's up off the ground. Open, you know, I mean, there's no wall here.
These were the houses that you drove past.
Yeah,
on the
these
way
were,
from the
this was
airport.
actually one of the better houses.
It's like the Dominican
And
Republic.
then
And
we,
this is in the back of the
Yeah.
taxi, and these boys would jump on and hitch a ride. Pedro was the taxi driver, and they would just run alongside, he'd slow down, and they'd hop on and get a free ride home from school.
because there was these awful potholes, and you'd have to come all the way to first gear to go through them, and it was slow, and they'd hop on, and then they'd hop off at a pothole near their house.
And you'd see they wore uniforms
Yeah,
to
school.
school, and it was very.
And boys and
Catholic
girls both
kind of
went to
situation.
school in Ecuador. In Chile, it was just the boys.
Mm.
And this is, 95, 96. And this is Esmeralda also, right? So in the morning, so that we wouldn't have to, we needed about 30 gallons of fuel, and we only had 15 gallons for our cans. So Pedro brought his own gas can so that we could make it in one trip, although he was giving up money because he would have gotten 2 trips. No, it was just a nice thing to do. But this was some of the fuel, this was the worst fuel that we got. We had a tester with a ball in it for a hydrometer for water. If you got a little bit of moisture, this ball would float a little bit and stuff. Well, we put this fuel in there, and the ball just went right to the top like it was all water. And it was real greasy. It didn't smell like fuel. It didn't look like fuel. Nothing about this looked like fuel. And we're going to have to go, as we left Esmeralda, we immediately had to fly over the mountains. So we had life vests. So we put those on. We took off over the ocean, decided we'd fly over the ocean. If it ran okay, we'd turn and go over the mountains. If not, we'd try and make it back to the airport or ditch in the ocean and figure things out. So we flew over the ocean, seemed to run okay, so we had south over.
We put our life vests on before we
Yeah.
took off. Remember that? We had inflatable life vests by then, that we bought.
Yeah, we didn't have them when we were flying to Cologne and stuff. When we landed in Panama City, the guy was saying, well, where were your life vests? And we said, somebody
Well,
stole
what
them.
happened is we went to the pilot store there in the airport, and we
Oh, yeah.
asked about buying some life vests.
Yeah.
And the guy said,
Well, what happened
well, I
to
thought you
yours?
came from the United States. Well, we did. Oh, did you lose yours? Yeah.
Yeah, we did,
Yeah,
we did.
lost one.
You wouldn't be stupid enough to fly down here without them this far, would you? Yeah. So, it's a shame when you get the price of gas.
Yeah.
And that's Pedro.
That's Pedro.
That's filling gas cans in a little Toyota truck. Shell was everywhere. Actually, we were supposed to get, Shell Oil was one of our sponsors. We were supposed to get oil, I think, in here, Columbia, and it didn't show up. There was a couple times it didn't show up. So then we took off from Esmeralda, headed south. Go ahead, it's your birthday.
Oh, yeah, crossing the equator on my birthday. We get
37th
the
birthday, 0, 0,
south
0,
0,
0.
0, 0, 0,
Wow.
007. My
Wow.
37th birthday.
Yeah, 49.15 feet.
And it's 78.4 knots.
Yeah, just really buzzing. Heading almost due south, 185 degrees south, 10:28 a.m. So, good start to the day. And then we landed in Guayaquil, Ecuador. And this guy is Leif Anderson. He's actually from Hastings, Nebraska. We'd never met him. He had been down there working for a company out of Hastings, Morrison Seed, and he ran a shrimp farm. And another fellow pilot, Walt Price, was friends with him, and he set up a meeting, contacted him, gave him our information, gave us a phone number and stuff. So we landed in Guayaquil, and we called up this guy, Leif, on the phone. He dropped everything he was doing, came out to the airport, greeted us like we were best of friends, known us his whole life, made sure our airplane was safe, made sure we were okay, got us a hotel room, gave us his driver and car for the day, and said, hey, I got a big meeting. Turns out he was in the middle of a meeting with some Japanese on about $1 million shrimp deal, and dropped all that to come meet these 2 pilots that he'd never met in his life. Just that kind of guy. And we're good friends to this day. He's back in Hastings.
Prince of the guy.
Yeah.
Introduced
And
us.
this was Eduardo, his driver.
And he introduced us that night to Rusty Nails. We've been drinking
Yeah.
What's a rusty name?
Rusty nails, yeah.
Scotch and scotch, yeah. And we went out, it was Kevin's birthday, so he took us out for dinner, and he's got the only Cadillac in Ecuador. And he parked in front of this restaurant, and the guy had a double-barrel shotgun about this long. And he walked up to him, and he handed him some money, and he whispered something to him, and came back, and we went in the restaurant and said, Leif, what'd you tell the guy? He said, I told him, here's $5, watch my car. And when I come back, if it's okay, I'll give you another $5, and if it's not, I'll cut your balls off. And he was dead serious. And
Yeah,
the car was fine.
I have a question.
Yeah.
He put you up in a hotel. Where'd you guys sleep all the other different times?
Cheap
Hotels, yeah.
Always hotels?
Yeah, and they weren't usually the best.
Well-
And although sometimes they were the best hotel in town, it was, sometimes it was a board with a thin foam mattress, and, one time we got fleas and down in Chile.
We were traveling on the cheap, so
Yeah,
the
we're
general
trying to save
drill
money.
up to around this point was, from the airport, we'd get a taxi, and we'd ask the taxi driver to take us to a cheap hotel, but not too cheap, like Barato, but okay, Barato means cheap,
Yeah.
And somewhere in here, we also figured out that you could actually save money, a taxi ride was usually 10 or 20 bucks.
Yeah,
And if you just walked a little ways out to the highway, depending on where you were, there'd be these buses that went by, and it'd be like 15 cents or something for a ride to town. So
yeah. If you got the right
Sling
bus,
your backpack.
it was heading to town and not the one that was heading out of town. We figured that
We're
out.
pilots, we
Yeah, we could
Right, right.
We can figure it out. But the best thing is, I kind of jump ahead here a little bit. We were in Chian, Chile, and we got this room. There was one time our room was a closet
That was in Portamont.
in Portamont. Literally a closet with a bed in it.
Big
The
old
bed-
Victorian house that had been divided up into like a hostel, where
Yeah.
backpack kids stay and stuff,
Yeah.
And we had a huge closet with 2 beds in it.
and,
Two beds.
and it had a shower.
At least
it
you
was
had
down
two
the
beds.
hall or in the basement. But the shower was an electric shower. And what that is all you have is a cold water pipe, and then you have this heating element that's on the shower head, and this frayed wire going over to this outlet that's right beside the shower. And 220, and that's how you heated the water and adjusted it. But my favorite thing was in Chian when we stayed at this one hotel. It was just a little room that this lady was renting in her house, and we asked for towels. It's kind of a standard thing here in the U.S. You don't think about it. And she looked at me funny, and, but they're eager to please, and so she came back with these 2 things. And I was going to take a shower, and I looked at these things, and one was a kitchen towel about this big, and the other was a set of drapes complete with hooks.
Oh my
And so I asked Kevin, I said, do you want the kitchen towel or you want the drape with hooks?
God! Can I just use your
But,
towel?
yeah, so it was, but she wanted to, give us something, but that's all she had. They didn't.
Wow.
But you learn stuff when you do stuff like this, and one thing I learned is bring a towel.
Yeah, that's it.
Bring your own towel.
Yeah.
Some places expect it.
So then we took off from Guayaquil and we went on to Peru. And the key thing here is this is getting into early January. And every year on January 27th, there's this kind of annual war, the border war that goes on between Chile and Peru. And it's exactly right over on the Pacific coast. And it's some argument about does the boundary extend to the north here, does the boundary extend to the south here, because the river changes course a few times. So they get into this little war for a week or 2 every January. A few people get killed and tensions are high and stuff. So anyhow, so we're flying into Peru since the airport was yeah. So this is the end of the runway in, what's the town in Peru? Talara. And those are anti-aircraft guns off the end of the runway.
Well, by the way, photos are prohibited.
Yeah, you didn't see this. And there's also missile batteries, I think, that were down the hill some and stuff. So, yeah, things started getting interesting in Peru. And also in Peru, they charge by the kilometer to fly. 20 cents a kilometer, plus landing
Peru was
fees.
expensive. It
Yeah.
was like
Really?
$300 a night to park.
Yeah,
$300
parking
a
plane and
night?
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What'd you guys
In
do?
In Ecuador it was that way too. In Guayaquil it was about $200 a day.
So what did you do?
Parking. Huh?
Pay it?
You have to pay.
Yeah, we got, no, it was.
No, because we were almost dying every day. We probably weren't gonna make it back anyway.
Actually, before I left work, I accepted that I might not have a job. I come back, I cleaned out my desk. I was prepared not to have a job. But I did. And it was kind of a challenge, like Paul says, because on the way down, I had to call them several times to set up a time. You know, there was some guy who was the administrator who set up the interviews,
Yeah.
and then the other guys who did them, you know. So,
Luckily, we're pretty much in the same time zone.
Yeah, that's right, you are straight.
Yeah, most of the
Yeah,
way.
so it wasn't too much. you
Except
know,
for
like-
Argentina, for some reason, it was 3 hours different. I
Yeah.
figured I'd
3
go
hours,
as
that's
far as-
weird.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
So you guys had to pay how much to stay at an airport at night?
Oh, 200 to 300 sometimes. Yeah.
At Lima, it was $300.
Actually, we expected our fuel bill to be our biggest bill, but actually landing fees and overflight fees and bribes and stuff exceeded or equal fuel.
For example, Panama City, right?
Yeah.
We wanted to leave on a Sunday. And they're
It's
not
closed.
normally open on a Sunday, you know. But we're paying like $200 a night, and we wanted to get out of there, you know. So we went and saw the guy, the general aviation guy, where you file your flight plan, and he said, no, we're closed today. He was there, I don't know why,
Yeah.
but he said they're closed today, we don't do that on Sundays. And we said, oh, we gotta get out of here, what can we do? And he said, well, maybe if you buy me breakfast.
Yeah.
So I talked about bribes, this was the one we paid. He said, I think Paul said, well.
No, that was in Lima.
Was that
Where we
Lima?
bought, yeah, if you
Yeah.
buy us all breakfast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
how much is breakfast? And it was about $30, which is, you know, a lot less than 300, so we paid it and took off.
Yeah.
But we found out later that they didn't file our flight plan. When we landed on the other end, they didn't know we were coming, so.
Yeah. Are we good?
You're good.
Oh, you didn't, I'm waiting.
So these guys, this guy is the air traffic controller from Talara, and this guy ran the restaurant in the airport. And they
They were
took us
great.
out and got us drunk and fed us local fare and showed us around. It was really,
Had really good
really a
seafood.
fun night.
Yeah.
Yeah, good seafood,
Yeah.
ceviche.
Gave us transportation. I don't think we had to pay any taxi
Right.
and stuff, so,
Yeah.
yeah. And we met him again on the way back, I think.
Did any of them know where Nebraska was?
No.
No, you always just had to kind of explain you're in the middle of the
Yeah.
United States.
You know, California? No, Nebraska. New York? No, Nebraska.
The middle.
Texas?
In
No,
between.
Nebraska. In between, right? Yeah. The place nobody goes. And this was flying in,
So how much did your entire trip cost?
if you count the 3 airplanes, about 100,000.
Yeah, I figured, well, I lost $20,000 a day. I crashed that airplane.
Yeah,
You paid
and
12 for
And I had about
12.
25 in the tri-pacer, and I had about 15 or 20 in the biplane, and then.
Besides the
So,
expense, that
and then-
expense.
And then the
Yeah.
expenses of the trip were probably 30,000, something like that.
30,000 for
For fuel
the
and hotel.
fuel and your bribes and your hotels and everything.
So if I was to follow you that time
Mhm,
to Costa Rica,
mhm.
what would it have cost me from Omaha to Costa
There
Rica?
wasn't much bribes and airfare and landing fees in Central America.
Yeah, South
It
In
America.
started
South
after
America,
that?
Yeah, South America is where it started to get expensive. Also, I should point out that we only had insurance until Panama. After Panama, the insurance went away on the plane.
Really?
So anything that happened in
Wow.
South America,
You're on your
I
own.
ate it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
the-
I was really relieved when we got back to Panama on the return. I'm like, "Ah, we got insurance.
The
here."
only,
At least,
the only thing about
At least
going to
Eric will
Costa
get some
Rica
money.
is Guatemala. You gotta get through Guatemala.
yeah.
You know, I've done this.
That
in
was
the air,
tough?
underground. Well, it's just not a nice place. Not
Yeah.
nice people.
Yeah, you guys said
They're
that
always in civil
before.
wars there. Huh?
Yeah, you've mentioned that numerous times.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
But once you get past that, it's like Costa Rica. Is beautiful. I mean,
yeah. A lot of
Well,
guys
that's the only
retire.
democratic country in the whole South America.
Yeah, it's pretty cheap. You can buy a house and live pretty good down in
That's all.
Costa Rica.
banana plantations and, you know,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful place.
Yeah.
Good seafood. Best seafood stew I ever had was in
Costa Rica.
Costa Rica.
Yeah, it's good. So here we are getting into Panama, and this is starting to get into the desert. What's the name of the desert? The Anaconda. And this is all sand blowing up. We're at about 6,000 feet here, and that's sand from the beaches up. That's
Well, I
just
thought it
blown.
was
That's
snow.
up there.
Yeah, and it like I said, the haze that we had yesterday here in Blair. I don't know if you had it. It was bad down there. That's what that whole stretch of South America is like every day. You're just flying it, and it gets on the prop. It eats up the prop. It eats up the struts. It eats up the wings. It eats up the pilot. It eats up the air filter. Everything. You got it in your teeth. It's just you go to get your clothes out and shake them out. It's just every day. There's just no getting away from it. Day after day. Yeah, just the sand and stuff. Eating up the stuff. What's the milk? And also when we looked at the O&Cs originally, and we were looking at Peru and Chile, it showed these 6,000-foot cliffs at the edge of the ocean. That can't be right. There isn't too much right about these maps. I can't imagine that is right. But that's how it was. The ocean came into just these walls of rock.
Like Dover, huh?
That, you know, if you had to go down, you know, and you ended up on, there was no beach. It was just, you know, you'd be beat to death by the waves and stuff. So you wanted to ditch far out and hope you got picked up by a boat. This is in Lima, Peru. Yeah, not a lot of tri-pacers there. It's all
The one
jets.
picture I regretted not getting was as we were walking out to the tri-pacer, there was an L1011 between us and the tri-pacer. And you could see the tri-pacer fully beneath the L1011.
Wow.
And all these other, you know, 727s, 707s, all these big jets and a tri-pacer. You know, they didn't, and that happened a lot. They didn't know what to do with a small plane because nobody's dumb enough to fly a small plane. Yeah, you know, here's a big jet here, and a big jet there, big jet over there. That's all there is, you know. I mean, there's no single engine airplane sitting around on the ramp. And these are the chocks that we picked up in Beatrice, Nebraska, on the way. They gave us a set of aluminum chocks that I still have them. I should hang it on the wall here. If I can bring it to my garage. Oh, we're skipping ahead. Okay, now.
This is San Juan, Peru.
Yeah.
It's a military training base for young pilots that were flying
Mentors.
Cessna
The turboprop.
T-37
Yeah.
turboprop engines
The,
as training airplanes. And these guys were like 18.
yeah.
There was
Maybe
one
the
guy
oldest
that
one
was in
was
his
20.
20s that was
Yeah.
like the commander, you know. They were a lot of fun. But they didn't have any gasoline, you know, they were flying turboprop engines, so they didn't have any gasoline on their airport. So they gave us a ride to town in their rescue vehicle or whatever.
Little horns and
Fire
sirens. and all
trucks.
that stuff. Oh, yeah, we had a
Oh,
blast.
yeah.
Going into
Every
town.
time a pretty girl would walk by.
It was a blast. They were really, really nice guys. They were on our side. And this was the
I
hotel.
always
we
wondered
stayed
what
at.
this
That's
picture
the
is.
hotel
Yeah,
with
this
the
is,
beer in it?
yeah,
The roof of the hotel.
the stairway, when you went up to your room, the stairway just kept going up, and there was a hole, you know, and so we gotta go up and see what it is. So it was the roof, and there was a deer, and we never did figure it out if it was dinner or a pet or,
Eventually, I'm sure, dinner.
yeah,
They're both fattening it up, you know.
Wow.
and the laundry hangout. And this was the best hotel in town, and it was like $10 a
$10
month
a night for
for
people.
a night, yeah. That's where we had the Inca Cola, where I forget the writer, the guy that wrote in Patagonia, he talked about Inca Cola tastes like melted popsicles and is a color not found in nature.
Oh,
I just thought that was
That
the best
doesn't sound
description.
good.
What
no,
I,
it doesn't sound very good.
It's actually made
what I
of
remember
coke.
about San Juan is going to the
It's a
bar that
Coca-Cola
night,
water.
and we're drinking in the back of this pickup truck, and then out of the
Oh, yeah,
back,
yeah,
outside
It's
all
all
the Air
about
Force guys.
Yeah.
in
and
Atlanta.
every time a pretty girl walked by, they had some song they sung. I don't know
Yeah.
what the words meant, but it was clearly offensive because the girls would turn it back.
Pilots. And just inland from this airport, within about 80 miles, something like that, this is the famous Nazca lines. We flew out to Nazca to see these lines, and we got a full load of fuel, and we're flying around. Do you see it? Because this is it.
That's it.
that we're flying and we circle and they got a guy there's an airport there where tourists fly in and they fly them up to see the Nazca lines, and we're asking them, where the hell are these lines? He says, oh, you just go south a little bit. There's a little tower here. There's this road that comes in, you can see a vehicle here, and it comes around like this. And I gotta look at the card to see, what's it say for this, for the first Nazca. I forget what we're supposed to be looking at here. But we found out what,
It says a monkey. I
Yeah.
think it's over here somewhere. But
Oh.
anyway, you know, when you see it on National Geographic, it looks like this huge drawing of a monkey. It's about as big as this room. You know, there was a pickup parked next to it. You could gauge the size of it.
yeah.
It's not quite as impressive as they make it. And actually,
And all the
down
sand
in this
blowing
brook,
around.
you
Yeah.
can see this mountain. You know, he talks about how the mountain was kind of shaved off on the top. But the drawings weren't that impressive. Some of the lines were. Some of those lines went for 3-4 miles straight,
Yeah.
which I can
Anybody that's
understand.
ever put a fence in.
Somebody could do that, but the question is, why would they? I don't
Yeah.
know, you know, but.
But yeah, we flew around, and then we found out when National Geographic comes down and stuff, they actually go out and sweep these off. And then when they do the photography, they do enhanced photography to, because, you know, when you see the pictures, I mean, they just jumping right out at you. They're impressive. So I was like, what the fuck are these things? So, yeah, these next pictures are some of that. So that's the monkey. Here's that tower again. Here's the bird.
The hummingbird.
Yeah, there's
You're gonna kind of
see the wings, kind of see feet, kind of see the beak. It's like, that's it?
Well, it's all crisscross.
And this is, I mean, we've been flying around for over 3 hours, or 4 hours. We're up 4 hours. We're just about gonna have to leave because we're gonna just have enough fuel to go. There's a closer one of the bird, and there's the feet, and it's like, that's it?
That's it.
People come without, I gotta think these people, because these airplane rides, they, you know, first it's really expensive to fly there, and then you take this little plane up, and that's expensive. The spider, you know, they're right there. There's the legs, and there's, you know, and he's about the size of this rug. I'm like, yeah, oh, it had to be done by the gods, you know, somebody from outer space, yeah. Or 2 people on a chair. It's like, I think I could, it was, I was just shaking. I'm like, that's it? You gotta be kidding. This is
Wow.
just not impressive.
This is those cliffs.
This is those cliffs. Here's the
that-
ocean. And at this point, I think this is where they're about 3,000 feet. But you see the sand all the way up and all the way.
Wow.
That's another.
You see a cloud right here, right?
Yeah.
The cloud's at about 2,000 feet.
That's a clown, huh?
It's like Dover.
And the Top Gear guys, they do a thing where they drive some cars across this desert to the ocean, and they about
Top
die
Gear.
doing it.
Yeah, you said that.
I like Top Gear.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that show.
This is Antofagasta.
Antofagasta down in
Now we're
Chile.
in-
Now we're into a nice country again. They're really nice. And it's a big, you know, Chile's 3,000 miles long. So once you enter Chile, there's no more fees and stuff. The scenery's nice. The people are nice. The food's, you know, it's safe. It's clean. There's not people with guns. It's a really, really nice country. And you could do a lot of flying. And there was actually a lot of flying clubs. Almost every airport we landed at in Chile had a flying club. And they had tri-pacers and air coots and
Colts.
Colts.
I know what you're talking about.
little
Yeah.
retractable gear.
Yeah.
Swifts.
Swifts.
Yeah, they had some Swifts.
Like
Yeah,
85 horsepower Swifts. and
Yeah.
stuff.
really neat. Yeah, that was this is where Leif said they made the worst martini in the world. But
Did you try it?
We were flying, so we didn't. Never drink and fly.
It was kind of a drab airport. Most of them were better.
Yeah. There we go. Oh, this is Viña del Mar. You go with this one. When we flew in here, the weather was really
At
bad.
Viña del Mar, you can't really see here, but up these mountains, they have these trolleys, they call them estaciones. They
Yeah,
built in
cable
the
cars.
1800s, they're like cable cars that go up the
Yeah.
mountains.
Is this in Chile?
Yeah,
This is in
yeah,
Chile.
about halfway down through Chile at this point.
So when we came into this town, right, this is the town where we landed at the military airport first,
Oh, God, I
right?
forgot about
And
that.
these guys, okay, we landed, got out of there. Now, when we came into Chile, we paid a $60 fee, and then they said, you don't have to pay any airport fees after that. No parking fees, no landing fees.
Yeah, one fee,
We
we're
landed
allowed.
at this airport, and they come out and they want money. You know, these guys dressed up in these military or uniforms, and we said, no, we're not getting any money. We showed them a receipt. They told us, we gotta
We
pay,
had to
and
pay
they
'cause
said
it was
no.
a military airport.
And so I said, well, then we'll take off and we'll go, there's another airport over the mountain. And they said, no, you landed, you gotta pay. And I said, no, and he said, no, we're not gonna let you take off. So I said, I'm gonna call the what do you call it, the embassy, the
Yeah.
American embassy. And if they say I gotta pay, then I'm gonna pay. So I marched in, and I had a book and I had the phone number. I'd written all these phone numbers down. I marched into the payphone, and I didn't even have any Chilean coins, I don't think. I had a handful of coins from different countries, and I was trying to make this phone work, But they, the bluff worked, and they said, okay, you can take off, don't call, you
Yeah.
can go.
And don't come back.
And don't come back.
We got that a lot. You can
Don't
leave.
come back.
Yeah, that's what they said in Cologne when they said, oh, it's okay to fly the Panama Canal, but you never heard from us, we never heard from you, and don't come
on the
back.
tape.
Yeah,
Everybody asked my name.
because they didn't want to do the paperwork. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So we took off, and we flew to this other little airport that was just like a few miles away.
Yeah, but
It was more of a private airport.
Yeah.
And a much different atmosphere. There was a nice guy there, there was a pilot. They didn't have, they had a tower there, but they didn't really have an
Yeah.
airport.
He was a race pilot or a race car driver that was a pilot.
Right.
Something
He was
about
driving on
racing.
a little
Yeah, he was a race car
sports
driver.
car, and
Yeah.
somehow we all crammed into that. He drove us to his friend's hotel,
Yeah.
which was one of the
Amazing.
funner hotels.
Yeah. Good meal.
Good
Good meal.
meal.
That's where we met the church
Sunshine.
group.
The church.
Got them all playing kazoos,
Yeah.
and wine.
That was a
Amazing Grace.
They were all, yeah, Amazing Grace on kazoos. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
It says this is the street musicians in China.
They were sleeping.
Yeah.
Must be the
Try
night
it on the
photos.
next one. No, that's not Chiana.
No, this is more of the haze
Yeah.
type ship that we were driving through, flying through, I mean. It was really intense.
So there.
There's the street musician.
There we go.
Yeah, that's the father-son, they were a hoot. This is a bass drum, a hi-hat up on top, and there's a hole through the top of the drum, the bottom of the drum, that goes to you can kind of see the string here, that goes to his foot, so when he kicks his foot, the hi-hat works.
Oh my gosh.
And then he's got these sticks that are behind him, and he's drumming on this drum, and they're drumming and dancing around and kicking their feet, the father and son, and it was really pretty cool.
That was kind of fun.
Just
It'd be
street
fun to
music, and
see.
then there was a little organ playing,
That'd
and
be
yeah,
fun
it
to
was
see.
just, this is where we got the towel and the drapes for the shower.
Nice people though.
Really nice town, colorful, it was really friendly, fun. This is just southern Chile, southern
Chilean
plains.
farmland.
It's a lot like Nebraskan stuff when you get inland in Chile. A lot of peach orchards and
Oh,
different
we have a
crops.
lot of
And
those
then
in
when you got on the edge of the
Yeah.
Andes, there was vineyards.
Yeah.
Oh, they got a
lot
ton of
vineyards.
vineyards in Chile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They got
Leif
great
said you
wine.
can't
Yeah,
buy
they do.
a bad Chilean wine. He said it just doesn't exist. They're all,
Oh, I know, that's great.
they're all good buys for the money and stuff, so. And this is
Mount
Osorno, yeah, big volcano. This is getting close to our furthest point south in Chile, and this is
Sawdust.
sawdust. This is mountains of sawdust. This is a
You can
big.
see the dozer over
That's a
there.
Oh,
huge
yeah.
loader. And somewhere on here, there's a guy standing. To give you an idea, this is the rainforest being cut down and stuff. And actually, I listened on the radio one day, and there was a guy down in Tekamah, Chile, this town, and he was heading up this Save the Rainforest thing, and he was interviewed on NPR. And I had his name. So I wrote him a letter with his name and Tekamah, Chile, and for the address I wrote, the guy interviewed on NPR about cutting the rainforest down. And that's all I had. I sent a letter out and I got a reply. And the guy invited us down, and we never got to meet him. We ended up turning around at this point. We started to get so far south, we were getting into some icing conditions. The weather was closing in, the mountains were getting taller, and there really wasn't any place, or even little towns, to buy fuel, and there wasn't very many airports. And we still had about 600 miles to go to Ushuaia, 600 or 800. And we decided, and they were having a lot of fires. That was kind of the what
And
made
what we were
it
told
a
was
lot of
that
smoke.
the visibility.
Visibility was awful.
You couldn't go very
Time?
far because of the
Okay.
combination of the smoke and the volcanic ash.
Time. So, we got to Portamont, we decided we couldn't go any further south, and elected to try and this is as far as we really planned, you know, we hadn't planned, we had all the airports and permissions and stuff for everything on the west coast, but nothing on the east coast, which would be Brazil and Argentina and stuff. But we thought, well, we'll fly over to Argentina, see how things are there, and maybe continue up the east coast if it's not too bad or expensive, and we could do that. So, so we flew over to Nucan, Argentina. Flying over the mountains. Go ahead, I'm way over.
Right, we turned left at Portamont, right, and went over the Andes. So this is where we're kind of in a
10,000.
foot sort of ceiling airplane going to 13.5. This is a little mountain lake that was up at about 10,000 feet. And really going east, everything was pretty good. We flew from Portamont to Nucan. Landed there, spent a
Good
day.
tailwind, because the prevailing winds are west to east. Of course, we're heading east, so what kind of trouble can you have?
So flying between peaks.
Okay. No,
So,
this is actually.
What was your altitude right there?
About 10,000
I
probably.
think we
13
figured that
maybe.
lake was at 10,000.
yeah.
We were maybe 12.
Yeah. And this is continuing, now we're getting on the
So
other
you can
side.
see the snow peaks, right?
Yeah.
We're coming over the other side into the, what do you call the plains of
Patagonia.
Patagonia of Argentina. This was the airport of Nucan. They had this Gloucester jet
World War
mounted
II.
there. Right, that's a German thing that.
That's one of the first jets made. It's kind of like after the 262, kind of a, next generation type thing. It was really cool. And mosquitoes were real bad here. Okay, now this is this the coming back now? I don't want to jump ahead. Let me jump ahead and then I can jump, yeah, this is coming back.
That's a cool picture.
Now it starts getting interesting. So we get back to the international airport to international airport.
Yeah,
We're
this is
gonna go
on
from
our way back to
Yeah.
Temuco.
We're going to go from Nucan, Argentina to Concepcion, Chile, about 150 miles. Not too, we got 500 miles, 5 hours range, 105 miles. So we take off and we got terrible headwind. We're doing about 28 knots ground speed. Chugging along, 3 hours into it, we're to a little town called Zapala. We still got the better part of 100 miles and the Andes Mountains to cross. And we're not going to have enough fuel. And we got no choice. We landed at Zapala to get more fuel, and again, we got to go into town with the taxis and stuff. And also, the winds are so severe, they're 45 degree, 45 knots. And when we landed, there was actually skid marks on the tire at 45 degrees. Got out of the plane, and then we started talking to the general there that's in charge of stuff, trying to explain to him. He's asking, well, you can't land here because it's not an international airport. And we said, well, it's on our flight plan as our alternate. And they said, well, they should have never approved that. And we gave them the flight plans. Apollo was our alternate. And so he starts doing all this paperwork. And this is about an hour and a half with this guy. He's going on and on. And finally, and of course, in the meantime, we got fuel, got plane fuel. And in the end, he took the paper, tore it up, threw it in the trash, and said, you were never here. I never want to see you again. I said, we got a lot. So we take off from Zapala. Now we still have to cross the Andes, and we're still in severe headwinds and stuff. And this is where it starts getting interesting. So we're flying along, we're flying through a pass. We go through 2 mountain peaks. I'm flying this day. And as we start going through the peaks, we're about 5,000 feet. And we start hitting a downdraft. Usually you hit a downdraft, 1,000 feet per minute down for about a minute, and then and then you get an updraft, downdraft, updraft. Well, this keeps going downdraft, downdraft. Now we've lost 2,000 feet. Now we've lost 3,000. Now we're down to where we've only got 1,000 feet to go, and we're still stuck in a downdraft with mountains coming up. And it's just not going to work. So we go to turn around. Well, like I say, these winds are so severe. Once you start trying to turn around, now the wind catches you. Now you're flying backwards. Now in flight school, they never told you how to steer a plane flying backwards. And keep in mind, we've just come through 2 mountain peaks, which we're well aware of. And we're trying to, and there's no rear window in the tri-picture, you can only kind of see out the side window. So you're trying to back this plane up between the
By the way, there's no minus sign on the GPS. It just,
Oh my gosh.
So then we found did the old trick where we found a little lake. Of course, these thermals coming off the lake, so we spent about an hour and a half circling over this lake in this thermal up to 13.5. Just which, of course, the ceiling on the plane is 10, but we got up to 13.5 and thought that would give us enough fat to get through this pass, which was about 10,000 feet. And then we shot ahead and we finally made it through the thing, and we hit some pretty severe downdrafts. We lost about 4,000 feet in about a minute and a half. We were glad we'd taken the extra time to get the extra fat and stuff. But then we got out of we still had pretty good headwinds, but the turbulence had left. The air was actually calm. We're above the clouds, and we're flying through the Andes at about 30 miles an hour. And this is the view we got. And it was just, everything's. It was just magnificent. This is mountain lakes and
this
stuff.
is actually black volcanic rock with snow on it. It was
And then there was mountain lakes, and you could just see it was just had gone from such an intense day to such a peaceful day. It was,
Wow.
and the day was far from over. We then landed in Concepcion, and we're trying to make time to get back. We're running out of time. We got to get back to work, and this is where we really start stepping things up. We actually landed, fueled up, and flew on to another airport, and you have to fly VFR rules in South America. You can't fly after dark, and they monitor it to the minute. And so your GPS says the sun sets at 8:52 p.m. and you better have closed your flight plan by 8.
They have a book. The air traffic controller has a book that says on this day sunset is at
this time at this
and if you're
location.
not on the ground, you're in trouble.
And so as we were actually on short final, we closed our flight plan to make it in time, and somebody turned us in. Remember there
He was pissed.
He was
angry.
Were you on time?
We were right on the
Our
mark.
wheels were on the ground right at the minute.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Literally without a
But he
big
was
spirit.
mad.
After all the hell we'd gone through, this guy's jerking us around. We're like, get real. We almost died 8 times today. And then, this was Temuco. The whole airport was well groomed. Really, really nice.
This was their Aero Club hangar back here. It was beautiful.
Really, it was just like a golf course there. It was really nice. And then we pushed down up into, this is Tekamah, Peru. We crossed back over into Peru. And keep in mind, we're on a limited budget and also limited time. We hadn't done laundry in a month. We've just been rinsing things out in a hotel sink every night. And so this is hanging the laundry out to dry while we're doing all the paperwork before we take off in the morning. This is it.
Most of the time the laundry was done in the sink, in our room. But, that was one of the reasons that being with Leif was a treat. He paid for our laundry.
Yeah, on the way
that
back.
was like a one time we had clean clothes.
It
The
was.
whole trip really clean. Smelled good.
And then we,
There's the famous
Tell them
picture.
about the rain.
There's,
Oh, the
there's
rain
the rain
stick.
stick. This thing, of course, won't fit in the plane. It'll fit all the way in the back of the back seat and then extend up between our heads. And it's tied off. We loosened the screw on the overhead speaker and tied the string off. So this thing is hanging like a clapper in a bell. It's basically suspended in the back of the plane like this with one head here and one head there. So.
Where'd you get that at?
So,
In Ecuador on the way back.
so when we would get into turbulence,
The thing would ring us like a bell. It wasn't one of the best
I
things we've
don't
done.
think Paul's ever been the same.
Yeah. So this is where
That's what happened.
this is where it starts
That's
to
what
get
you're blaming it
interesting.
on.
We come up through Peru and now we come into Talara again, which is on the border. Now it is like the 25th or 26th of January, and we're within a day or two of Civil War. And we know tensions are high, so we ask them there, how things are, and they say they're pretty tense. Now we have to fly from Talara to Guayaquil, and there's some mountains in between. And we have a tough time getting the flight plan approved because both countries are at odds with each other, and So it's agreed that we can go, but we have to maintain at least 5,000 feet over the mountains and stay in radar contact the whole way. So we take off and we're flying along, and we start getting into some clouds, and we start climbing. Of course, the Tri-Pacer's notorious poor climber. And as we're getting, we're flying just above these clouds boil up around us. Again, I'm flying this day, and our artificial horizon that's run off the Venturi freezes up, starts rolling. We don't know if we're left or right. We're watching the ball, but we don't know if the wings are level. We can feel like it's turning, but we don't know which direction. So we don't know if we're in a spiral, but we don't know if we're spiraling left or spiraling right. We know that when we entered the clouds that down below, it was clear about 1,000 feet to the ground. We're hoping that's still true. So the only thing you can do is you pull the throttle back, you take your arms off the yoke, you cross them, and you put your feet on the floor and you just wait for about 30 seconds. And you fall for about 3 days, it seems. And then you come out of the clouds and you see if you're going this way or if you're going this way, and you grab the yoke and you correct and hope you got enough time before you get to the ground. And so we came out under the clouds, and then we said, well, screw this. And of course we were trying to stay on top to stay in radar, otherwise we've gone under the clouds. Finally we said, screw it, they can shoot us down. It'll be better than being in the clouds. So we flew under the clouds into Guayaquil. And that's the time that Leif put us up and he treated us like kings. And we were really, really tired at this point because we'd been pushing hard, and he put us in the best hotel in town. He insisted on paying for it. He did our laundry for us, took us out to dinner. I remember, Kevin, we got into this. This is the first time we've had an actual bed in over a month, a bed with a cushion. And Kevin is jumping up in the air and landing on his back on the bed, and bouncing back up, and jumping up and bouncing back up. And he's got this Nestle's Crunch bar out of the refrigerator. It's one of these great big things. And he's just and he's just got this big, look at a bed! Look at a bed! This is just...
Chocolate, a bed, chocolate.
This is great. Oh, and that's when we had the rusty nails and stuff again. And that's when we got introduced to chutney on sandwiches and stuff. Yeah, we were like two college kids home for the weekend. It was, Mom and Dad took care of us. His wife Betty was just a princess. And then after that we left, and that was probably the last good. That was the beginning of almost dying every day for about 8 days. We took off out of Guayaquil into clouds and flew north over the mountains.
We took off out of Guayaquil into smoke.
Oh yeah,
They
that's
would
right.
burn
Smoke.
off the fields. That's the way they do it down there. At that time of year, they burn off the fields.
Yeah, it was haze and more haze. And then we went up into Colombia, and when we were in Guayaquil, we changed the oil in the plane, and I had my shirt off for like 20 minutes, but I got probably the worst sunburn of my life, and I was in pain. And we got into Buenaventura, and it was an agony. So you went into town. Tell them about that.
I went to a couple of pharmacies trying to buy some
Solar cane
or something, and I kept getting chased out of the pharmacies. They would yell at me and make me go. And finally, one guy pulled out this big red book of things that are illegal. And apparently in Colombia you can't. He explained to me in Colombia you can't buy topical anesthetics of any kind without a prescription.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty tight on drugs, ironically.
Yeah, especially when it sounds like cocaine,
Yeah.
in bad Spanish and stuff.
So yeah, all you could get was like some lotion. You couldn't get anything like Silvertone.
Yeah. So, but it passed after a couple days. But then when we left Buenaventura, we're flying over the ocean. We got a little bit of a tailwind, so now we don't think we have to go to Jaque, that we can make it all the way to Panama City. But we took off in the right. We'd always take off on the left tank, run it for about a half hour, switch to the right tank, run it dry, and switch back to the left. Well, we took off on the left tank. We're flying over the ocean about 500 feet. We switch to the right tank, and it starts running rough. We're concerned. That's half our fuel. So I got this, Kevin's flying this day, and I got this bright idea that I could sump the fuel
window.
out, well, there's no window through the door, so
Yeah.
you're trying to open the door in 100-mile-an-hour wind and reach up to this thing, and so it finally
Well,
burned.
finally, I figured out that if I trimmed it out at a certain speed, you know, apparently the water rolled back or something, you know,
Yeah.
and it ran fine, it didn't stumble.
Yeah.
So we just kept it trimmed at that speed. That was the day that the Pelican flew.
No, that must have been a different, that must have
No.
been a
That
different day,
wasn't
because I was flying the day the Pelican flew, because you were looking out with the camera. Yeah, we had a Pelican that just went under the right strut. I mean, just.
Between the strut and the wing.
Yeah, just a huge thing. And it didn't scare us. Kevin was pissed he wasn't running with his camera. He's like, dude, that was cool. We were hitting pretty hard at this point, you know, and I'm hitting a Pelican. I mean, we've been going backwards between mountain peaks. So, we made it back up into Panama, and then flying.
And they let you land?
Yeah, and then from Panama to Costa Rica, again, flying out over the Gulf. This time, we didn't mess around flying the coast. It was all thunder. We just weaved between thunderstorms all the way across the ocean and stuff. That was a hard day to Costa Rica.
Well, this time we stayed on the left coast, we stayed on the west coast
Yeah,
of Panama. We didn't cross over.
right.
Right.
Yeah,
And then went all the way to Mexico that way,
yeah, up to Costa Rica.
up to Costa Rica that way.
Yeah. And then and then we just refueled in Costa Rica and continued on to Nicaragua. And it was getting late in the day, and Nicaragua wasn't going to give us permission to land because we didn't have our flight plan. We were getting ahead of ourselves on flight plans because we're trying to make good time. And so we got.
You had to telex your flight plans.
Yeah.
Send it by telex. You know, and tell them what day you're gonna be there. You know,
Yeah, what
it's
day and
like
time.
1960s technology.
Yeah, and so they didn't want to let us land. And so we finally argued with them that, well, and they wanted us to turn back to Limon. We said, we don't have enough fuel, we're going to have to land in Nicaragua and get fuel in order to go back. Well, there was a couple things we knew. First of all, we knew that they didn't have fuel in Nicaragua and that we'd have to go into town. And second of all, we knew that they wouldn't let us fly after dark and we'd be landing just before sunset. So if we could get on the ground, they'd have to let us stay, and that's what we ended up doing. They were pretty pissed. But again, it was just bad weather the whole way, and
Yeah, by the time we got fueled up, it was too late to take off.
not sure where we're at on the slides
Actually,
Yeah.
so this is back.
here. Yeah, now we're getting into this is our best
So
day of
this is
flying.
after Tapachula. We've gotten from all the way up to Tapachula, Mexico, through
Yeah.
Guatemala to Tapachula, Mexico, and
We have to cross the Sierra Madres.
we had to cross the Isthmus of Tehuantepec, it's called, yeah, which is the.
Well, we didn't have to at that point. We were going to go direct to Mazatlan over the mountains, but we couldn't get over. And so we went to the.
This day we were flight planned to Tuxtla Gutierrez and from Tapachula, and
Which meant going over the Sierra Madres.
no,
No? Okay.
but
Oh, this,
so
this is the wind side, this is Ixtapec.
this is Ixtapec.
Yeah.
So, no, you gotta go around the mountains, and so this is the day you could see the sideways tornadoes blowing off the mountains.
Yeah.
And the airplane.
Mountain
was-
rotors.
Yeah, mountain rotors, and the airplane was up and down. Paul was flying this day. And so, the only place we could get to, I'm glad Paul was flying this day, because honestly, I'd have ditched it on the beach. We're over, you know, that narrow part of Mexico, that isthmus. We're pointed inland, the beach is below us.
Full
right?
throttle.
Full throttle, and we're not moving. And I'm thinking, you know, we're going out to sea here in a minute. You know,
Yeah.
and that's bad. 'cause
And the nearest land is like Easter Island, 2,500 miles
So if
away.
we ditch in the ocean,
Because we'd never
we're not
make
gonna
it.
be able to swim back
Right.
to land, you know? So if I'd been flying that day, honestly, I probably would have ditched it on the beach, but Paul said, no, let's try and climb to a different altitude, and it was better there. We were
Yeah.
getting maybe,
8 knots.
8 knots that way, you
Yeah.
know?
We've been,
You have a
at this
question?
point, we've been flying for about 4 hours.
Time.
Oh, Okay,
Time.
go ahead, because this
Okay.
is the good one.
I don't want to miss this.
Across the Sierra Madres, the last mountain range on the trip. and the winds were severe, and like Kevin said, we hit these mountain rotors, and it was, I mean, our vertical speed indicator indicates 2,000 feet per minute up or down, and it was pegged, either up or down, in 30 seconds apart. I mean, it was all you could do to just keep the plane from falling apart. I mean, we got so tired of fighting the thing, and meanwhile this stupid rain stick is bang, bang, bang.
Oh.
We've got our seat belts as tight as they will go, and we're still hitting our heads on the ceiling. And, you know, the plane is climbing 2,000 feet per minute. I got the yoke all the way in, and just trying to keep the plane level and keep the wings on. And the next minute we're going up at 2,000. I mean, you're just constantly, the yoke's either all the way in or all the way out, trying to counter these things that it was just uncontrollable. And our ground speed was slow. And then, like Kevin said, I finally got down on the beach, and the wings are parallel to the beach. We're at full throttle, and we're not moving. And it's like, this really gets your attention. And now we're about 4 hours into 5 hours of fuel. So besides everything else, we're getting fuel critical. And so there's a military airport called Ixtepec about 20 miles away inland. And that's when I got the idea, well, maybe if we change altitude, you know, the winds are so severe at each altitude, they got a very little, and I found an altitude where we got to maybe about 8 knots, or maybe 14, whatever. And it was, and again, without 2 people on board and the GPS, because the plane is pointing here, and the airport we're going to is over there. I mean, you just don't think that you're going in this direction, and you're just, you know, and all the time it's just these severe, you know, you're up on end on the wings and stuff, and up and down, and just, you know.
So in the meantime,
It's 85 mile an hour
Our
wind.
stomachs wouldn't have.
Ball flying through our
No.
we dial up 121.5,
Oh, yeah.
right?
God.
And some Delta airliner flying over picked us up, and we told them our situation. We told them we didn't know where we were going to end up, but
We said we're going to land at Ixtepec,
report that we're headed for Ixtepec,
and we're going to land there. And he
and
said,
they did. And that's one thing that helped us out, because we landed at military air base without permission.
yeah, and this one, the Chiapas War is going on in Mexico with the guerrillas and stuff, and we're in the middle of the Chiapas area. And that was the thing.
Aren't you glad
Yeah.
you weren't with him?
The Delta pilot, when we called in the request on 121.5, we said, please notify Ixtepec that we're landing. And he said, he got back and he said, I'll forward them your request. And I said, negative, this is not a request. We are landing at Ixtepec, please notify them that we're coming in. And so we came in, and like I said, it's 85 mile an hour winds, and a tri-pacer at full throttle goes 100. So normally when you come in to land, you're throttling back, you're dropping flaps and stuff. You got to come in at full throttle, and you land like a helicopter. I mean, when we put and the thing was that now we are down to fumes on the fuel, and I remember saying to Kevin that, I mean, we're convinced we're going to crash. I mean, with these violent winds, there's no way we're not going to end up in a ball on the ground. And I said, there shouldn't be much of a fire because we're about out of fuel. You know, you're always trying to find the good one. And as we're coming in, just before we get over the numbers, I mean, we're just a few feet off the ground. We hit this gust of wind, and it puts us vertical. Left wing almost contacts the ground, and bring it back and put it on the
Holy
ground
cow.
and just drive it in and keep the throttle in all the way to the ground. We landed, I don't think we rolled 20 feet. And we just
I don't think we rolled. No, now think about this. You're in an airplane that stalls at 38 or 36 or something, and the wind even on the ground is like 60 miles an hour. So you're sitting on the ground, he's still flying the airplane, you know, on the ground.
yeah, sitting there.
You know, even with
And it was just, we can't believe we're sitting on the ground. We're not in a ball. And we're like, I think we landed.
so right then, the wind shifts again, and the airplane tips over on the right wingtip. At that point, I was in the process of opening the door so I could get out to walk the wing, you know, help hold the wing horizontal. And just as I open the door, the airplane goes like that. I got my seatbelt undone already, and it just dumps me in, right? And My passport is in this pocket
Oh,
right
no.
here, and it goes.
And we just landed at a military base
Jesus
without permission. One piece of paper you don't want to
So
lose.
I got the wing picked up, and I looked at Paul and I said, just keep flying the airplane, I gotta go look for my passport.
No, we weren't just on the wing, we were on the nose.
No, but I got it picked back up. I got
Yeah,
the wing picked back
but
up.
when the plane went over, it went on the right wing and the tail
And
came
the
up.
prop.
And the prop went ka-chunk, 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 and I shut the engine down and we were on the nose and the right wing tip.
So to
when he
finish
got
my
out.
story,
Yeah.
help me out, right? I got the wing picked back up, the airplane's back on its landing gear, Paul's flying the airplane, it's on the ground, my passport's off in the weeds somewhere. So I said, hey, I gotta go look for my passport. And he says, I'm all right, you know. So I said, all right, I run off in the weeds, I get about 50 feet off in the weeds, and the weeds are like this high. And I said, there's no way I'm gonna find my passport here, so I just ran back to the airplane. And on the way running back to the airplane, I practically tripped over my passport.
Oh,
my gosh.
wow. Things were
That
looking
was meant
up.
to be.
Now, in a tri-pacer, there's only a right door.
It's
There's
time for
not, there's
things
not
to
a door
turn
on both sides, so I gotta go out the right door too. And when you ran off, I got out of the plane to hold the wings down, because the planes want to go all the way over. When you jumped out, you grabbed the tail.
I got the wing righted and the airplane.
Yeah, and got it back down on the ground, and so then I could hold it on the ground. But this wind, I mean, it's hard to describe just how severe this wind is. I mean, you got rocks the size of golf balls blowing around like they're ping pong balls, and you can't talk. It is so loud. You just have to scream, standing face to face, just to be heard. And as you're holding this wing strut, your feet are actually coming off the ground, you know, trying to hold this plane down. And here we are, we're in this severe wind. Now we can see there's some hangars over there, and there's some soldiers out starting to mill around the outside. And they've all got guns. They're not coming over to help. We're, you know, several minutes have passed. We're in this plane that's trying to go up and down. So finally I say, I gotta go over and try and get help. Kevin weighs more than me. You hold the plane down. I'll go get help. So I run over to these soldiers, and they're all crowding around with guns, you know, and they're all one of these poking things. I'm like, come on, we need help, you know, and stuff. And they don't know
They
what
just form a circle around the airplane.
Yeah, they come out to the plane, and they're just
holding their guns.
Yeah, and they're just standing this close.
Paul, as smart as that he is, his comment is, good news. They're not.
They're not on full automatic. I can see the SA switch. The S is select fire and A is full automatic. And I said to Kevin, good news, it's on select fire.
Shit.
They got that going.
And you found your passport.
Yeah,
That's
we
two
got our
things.
passport. But they're still not helping.
Lucky day.
And
Yeah.
we're trying to put our hands in the air, you know,
But
like,
hold the plane
like
at the
common
same
thing.
time.
But every time we let go of the plane, it starts going away, so we gotta grab the plane and pull it down, then we're trying to, so it's just this, you know, Keystone Cop pantomime thing going on. And finally, after several minutes, they finally come and figure we're no threat and help walk us in the plane into a hangar and get it out of the wind and stuff. And this is the windsock that it's just all tatters and stuff at this airport.
And this is the tower that nobody was in
Because who was going to fly in a day like this? And this, we took this picture to prove to the insurance company that it was not a motion incident, that we were at rest when the propeller hit the ground. You can clearly see three things, and it wasn't a boom, boom, boom. And we had to pay $300 for the repair of the runway.
Oh, no
And I'll
kidding.
bet if you go to Ixtapet today,
It's
that's
still
that's
there.
still
I'll bet
there.
it is too.
Adams.
Yeah, and also notice the strap on my camera is straight out from the wind.
So
They
kept us
were
there
real
for two-
adamant about no pictures.
They kept us there for 2 days under armed guard. They let us sleep in the barracks there, and they fed us at the officers' mess hall. Took good care of us. A couple of young guys followed us around. And in the end, we had to go in the commandant's office and had to write another letter of apology to the
Castro. The general's name was Castro.
well, Castro was the guy that shot the Castro. No, you're right,
I
Castro.
got a letter that signed
He's
by
like the head
Castro.
of the Air Force of Mexico or something.
Well, and we also needed pictures of the bent wing tip, or the bent propeller for insurance. And we had a hard time convincing them to let us do that because they had some, what were they, T-38s, jets or whatever. They weren't sure that we weren't spies. They didn't want any pictures of anything that would you know, that the guerrillas could use against us and stuff. So we spent 2 days there, a couple trips into town to get fuel, because we were dry.
So did you get the prop fixed?
No.
You flew with it like
I
that?
got one phone call and I called Jim Fix in Lincoln. And I said,
Oh, yeah.
Jim, I got a little bit of a predicament here. I said, I'm in Ixtepec, Mexico. We just had an incident where the plane tipped over and we got a bent tip, 2 bent tips on the prop.
What should I do?
Can we straighten it? Can we heat it? And he said, don't touch it. Run the engine, see if it vibrates real bad, see if you can fly it. And don't try and straighten them, don't try and heat them. Anything you do like that will make it worse. And so that was a good call, because we might have tried the wrong thing. So we filled up with fuel, which took 2 or 3 trips into town. And then when we got permission to leave 2 days later, it hadn't improved that much. It was, but now it's Kevin's turn to fly. I don't care.
But
And I walked away.
I'm off
we
the
figured
hook.
out that the wind was the calmest, you know, first thing in the morning,
Right.
right at sunup. We couldn't take it off before sunup because, you know, you couldn't VIFR or VFR at night. And so our plan was, you know, to take off right at sunup.
We're full fuel.
With full fuel, fly to the next town, which was like 60
100?
miles.
100 was 100 miles.
100 miles, okay.
We got 5 hours of fuel. We only got to do 20
Couldn't
miles
make
an hour.
it, couldn't make it. We were doing like 8
8,
knots ground
yeah.
speed. So we turned around, decided to go back to Tapachula because it's a civilian airport, which is better than being at a military airport.
No, we decided we'll try another mountain pass closer between Ixtepec and Tapachula. And that's where the pilot window blew out.
Oh my gosh.
Well, we're headed back south towards Tapachula. So now the wind is coming right from my left, which is the side I'm on, right? So I've turned around and the mountains are on my left and I'm headed back to Tapachula. And it's the same thing. It's, you know, 2,000 feet a minute up, 2,000 feet a minute down, and you're just waiting for the wing strut or the wing to break. You know, you're thinking it's going to happen, just a matter of when. And the left window, because I'm headed south, blew out into my lap. You know, plexiglass window shatters into my lap. And oddly enough, it just didn't surprise me that much. You know, I just kept
Got
flying.
noisy.
Really annoying. You
Yeah,
know.
really.
But we got back to Tapachula and parked at the airport there, and we needed a window, so we took one of the ONC charts and held it up to the opening of the window and traced out the size of the opening, right? And then we got a taxi and had him take us to a hardware store and told him to cut us somehow this size, but you know, we had it on a 1/2 inch or whatever for the track. And got
Uh-oh, he's got it.
Kevin, I talked him into bringing us.
back to the airport and installed the window and do a little trimming with our Leatherman multi-tools.
We had to convert everything to metric. So that was our tracing of the, that's a left window and a Piper tri-patient.
So if you ever need a window for the tri-tracer, I got a blueprint you can run.
But also, we've been throwing maps out along the way to save weight. And now we decided we'd try and go a little further south. That's upside down.
So we've thrown away the chart where we were actually. When we were in Tapachula, we were headed this way, so we didn't think we'd be back. So we'd thrown the chart away. So we couldn't go back here, so we didn't have a chart to go back here. So when we were in the Tapachula airport, which is right down here, we took this chart, and they had a big map of Mexico on the wall that had latitude, longitude, on it, you know. So we traced out estimated latitude and longitude, you know, scaled it by, you know, 3 fingers equals 1 finger or something, and plotted our course that way to get back out of Tapachula.
And meanwhile, there's all these people. This is an airport terminal with, you know, people flying, and they're looking at these guys. Yeah, there's these 2 Americans drawn on this map, and then they go out and get this airplane and
Two
take
guys
off.
that haven't showered for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So we're at Tapachula. We talked about it a long time. We decided, I don't know, you got any more slides? We decided to
No,
parked the airplane
back to
there.
the start.
Yeah. Well, we did try one more time. We decided we didn't have any luck going north. We thought we could go south, but now as we go south, we'd be getting into the Chiapas. That's why we traced the map. We were heading down south, down towards Guatemala. Thought if we went 2 or 3 volcanoes and took a left, maybe we could get around. But we couldn't get the plane over like 4,000 feet. We didn't want to fly too low and be shot by the guerrillas. And we couldn't go high enough to get up over the mountain. So
You're still flying with that prop?
yeah, this is all with the bent
With
prop.
the bit.
Yeah, this is the next day.
Yeah, this is when the window blows out, this is all this stuff. And so that's when we just decided we got no choice, we gotta go.
Couldn't get over the mountains.
Couldn't get over the
Went
mountain.
back to Tapachula a third time.
Parked the plane,
Parked the plane,
Bought a
got a
ticket.
ticket, flew home.
and
ordered
flew
a
into
prop.
Dallas.
Oh, you
cleared
left the
customs.
plane there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And,
I don't
Oh, I
remember
think I
that.
remember you telling me that. That's
Yeah.
right. So what happened?
Then we left the plane there. I was about out of vacation. Sensenich, we'd been sending all our sponsors faxes. There wasn't internet at that time, and they just loved us. They're on waiting for what's the next thing that happened.
Just like
And
when we went to Russia.
And when they got that story, they sent us a prop without even another brand new prop without even asking. Here you go. We love you guys. This is great.
Wow.
Have at it. And then
Cool.
Kevin went down there with George, put the new prop on.
Me and
Oh,
George.
you and George.
Yeah, we checked at his luggage,
No.
put it in the box, checked at his luggage, flew down there, bolted it on, right? George and I, we took a wrench with us
And this is in Mexico.
in Tapachula, Mexico.
I'll be
Yeah.
And
damned.
then
Flew back.
Carmen said, all right, I'll get the inspector to come out and inspect your prop so you can go. I'm like, okay, Carmen, we'll be right here. We got the airplane, took off.
George Zarnicki or George Bollock?
George Bobcat.
Babcock.
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 I'll be darned.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and we flew in. Our flight was from Tapachula to Dallas, and then on to Omaha. And when we got into Dallas, this is after 40-some days in Central South America. Kevin walks across the terminal and goes up to a drinking fountain and starts drinking water. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah,
Drink
it's
water.
Safe to drink water
Jeez,
again.
I thought you were going to commit suicide.
And he still wouldn't drink the water.
I still wouldn't drink the water.
He'd have a
Wow.
lot of trouble with
What
it.
an
Yeah.
adventure.
Yeah.
And when we got back, I remember driving my Toyota Tercel, and I was stopped at a stop sign, and as I started rolling along, I found myself pulling back on the steering wheel. As I got to about 30 miles an hour, I'm like, I hadn't been in a car in almost 2 months.
And that reminded me of George's
I
story.
remember
when
that
we
feeling
landed
too after our ride.
at what's the last town in Mexico? Whatever, where we're crossing the border. We're in Mexico, and we borrowed the airport car there, and George gets in, and there's a bunch of student pilots there, Mexican student pilots. George gets in the car, closes the door, goes, clear prop. You just get used to it.
What an adventure.
That was an
So that's that.
Woohoo!
I think it was great.
great adventure.
Yeah.
So basically the trip was,
And I remember it was a Sunday because I remember we both read that Sunday paper like 3 times.
You should have drank tequila.
Yeah.
And, so that was one.
Yeah, I didn't see this article last time.
And then the other thing was we landed at some airport in Oklahoma and got fuel. And it was funny because this guy was working on 2 airplanes that had crashed because they ran out of fuel. And we fueled up there. We had them fill it up. And I had a receipt. It had like 40 gallons or whatever that thing held,
Yeah.
And we got like half an hour north. And right tank that you start on ran dry. I mean, and I was
They
on the
didn't
deck
fill it
having
up?
fun, just low and fast as much as you can. Try pacer. I was like boom, boom, and luckily from
All the experience of you immediately
it was
reach
just
down and
instant
switch.
to reach for that fuel lever and
Mhm.
swap tanks, and I did, and we were okay. But he'd short fueled us, I'm
That,
sure.
that bad meter or something, or just shorten it, yeah.
So what'd you finally do with the airplane? I remember you told me.
Sold it to Ole over in Harlan.
Oh, you're kidding? What
Yeah.
did you do?
And then he sold it to a guy in Nebraska that ground looped it or something. It needed recovered. That was something we left out, that we punched about 7 holes in the airplane on this trip. Different.
Put some
In
duct tape
Hockey, we punched a hole in the belly,
Mhm.
all the sticks and debris and stuff. Yeah, we had some clear 3M tape with us, and yeah, we had several patches on them, you know, because it's all fabric.
Amazing.
Leading
But
edge tape.
anyhow, so this guy out in, he was out in central Nebraska, he reskinned it and repainted it. And, also, when we got back, because of the prop strike, we pulled the engine, sent it down to central cylinder, and we found out it was this close to spinning a bearing. We don't know how long it was
Wow.
this close to spinning a bearing. Would have been interesting.
That's
How-
why they
Yeah.
the prop strike.
Several of those days, it would have been, if I spun a bearing on a Volkswagen, you know, it dies, nothing works, it just
You know what that all means?
spins. So, yeah. But anyhow, then that guy sold it, it ended up in Muncie, Indiana, and the reason I know that is, several years ago, out of the blue, I got a call from this guy in Muncie, Indiana, and he says, I bought this tri-pacer, and I'm going through this paperwork, and I came across this stuff on this great South American air adventure, and it had your number in it. So,
Cool.
and actually, flying out to Eric's, I'd divert around Chicago a lot of times because of weather, and I'd actually landed in Muncie before, and I said, well, the next time I come through, I'll look you up, I'd like to see the old plane. And I used to check the registry, you know, for 1659 Alpha, and it'd be Muncie, Indiana. And a couple of years ago, I checked it, and it doesn't show up anywhere, so I'm afraid the plane got wrecked and pulled off the registry or something.
Oh.
That's too bad.
Or they changed, it's possible they changed the N number,
Hmm.
but it's more likely that it
There
got
should be a record of that, shouldn't
wrapped
there?
up in a ball. Oh, also, when we were in Panama, I remember that one guy told us about they bulldozed like 10 or 12 tri-pacers and Colts off the end of they were parked on the end of the runway, flying school, and they just
Yeah.
bulldozed them
They
off.
used them for a flying school. And
Yeah, then they
they
were done
wore out,
with it,
they
they just
just pushed them off.
pushed them off the end of the runway with a bulldozer, made room for other stuff.
Huh.
So you think we would have made it to Costa Rica?
I think it's probably a blessing that you had your event.
Dennis was supposed to go with us.
That's
know,
what they
we
were telling
supposed
me.
to do that.
I had a pacer, which is the same thing but a tail dragger,
Gracie,
and I had all the plans to fly with these guys to Costa Rica, as far as Costa Rica, and then Betty was going to fly commercially down to Costa Rica, and we were going to fly back. But I had some medical problems, so I couldn't go, and that might have saved our asses.
Hard event.
I mean, it was all pretty good going down.
So it might have worked out just fine.
Yeah,
You know,
you're still alive.
I mean that was